Hello, I'm Sam from Interstellar Rabbit Hole Collective, and this is Be the Change Industry Dialogues, where we amplify voices and foster meaningful conversations within the music and arts industry. Our mission is to champion change, encouragement, collaboration, and respect by sharing stories, discussing important issues, and exploring how we can do better together. Join us as we navigate the industry's challenges and celebrate the triumphs one dialogue at a time. Today, we have a special guest, true blue, really good friend of mine I've known for a very long time, Brandon Turner, Fya Boy.
Thank you for having me, Sammy. I'm very excited.
Of course. So happy to have you here. It's been a long time coming. So tell us and the viewers a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name's Fya Boy, also known as Brandon. That's my government name. I kind of come from a background of heavy metal, punk music. I played in a couple bands before starting my production journey in electronic music. I played in a metalcore band. I also played in a pop punk band. We had some moderate success in different ways. My first band had some pretty decent success on the internet, and this is kind of in the what I would call the golden age of social media. The good old days. Uh, and my second band had a lot more success in the live music arena. We played with several pretty big bands. I say pretty big. Hinder's big, right? So we played with Hinder, Saving Abel, big radio bands from that time period, and yeah, so I bring a lot of that more metalcore and emo kind of pop punk influence into my electronic music. I try not to do it in a way that is corny and sounds like you're just mashing, two genres together. And instead, I try to work that into the way that I model my chords, melodies, and climactic points in songs. So. Yeah, that's pretty much me. I like heavy music. I like intense stuff, but I also like really beautiful music, and I like to kind of meld the two together because that's what life is. It's both beautiful and terrifying. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Awesome. So thanks for sharing some of your background with us. I did want to start the questions here with that. What was the biggest challenge that you faced going from that world into the electronic world?
Ooh, that would be hmm. Biggest challenge going from those two worlds was it's a culture shock because electronic music brings people from all walks of life and all genres. When you're in a metal band and you're playing a show, you can pretty much guarantee that everybody at that event is going to like one specific genre, and that's metal. You're playing with metal bands. Everybody's kind of into the same things. With electronic music, it's a little bit different. And when I first started, I didn't really understand how wide electronic music was. I'd never really been exposed to it. So electronic music, in my estimation before I started listening to Skrillex, was Boots and Cats, and when I thought of electronic music, I thought of like house and European hardcore, bong 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 bong, that kind of stuff. So I didn't really have a grasp of how wide that genre was. And when I started hearing dubstep, I was like, oh, this is kind of the be all end all of electronic music. And once I started getting into electronic music, I started noticing that actually there's a lot more to it. I don't consider EDM a genre. I consider that a descriptor. So, and when I first started in making electronic music, I didn't really understand that. So that was kind of strange to me. And the other thing that was kind of strange to me was, and I really noticed this up in New Hampshire, is that the electronic music scene is, I don't mean to disparage, and I don't make this as any genre. I make the music I love to make. But the electronic music industry is tough because like you can say like I make dubstep, and no one actually knows what that means
There's a
because
whole broad
that can
spectrum
go
of what dubstep means, depending on what generation
and
of EDM you're into, too.
yep, depending on the geography of the person who you're talking to, that means different things. Like if I tell someone in Florida that I like dubstep, they're probably going to assume brostep or rhythm. If I tell somebody that is from the UK I like dubstep, they are going to have an entirely different idea before they hear my music of what it's going to sound like. So that was a pretty big challenge because if I tell people I make metalcore, like there's no question as to what that means. There's going to be breakdowns, there's going to be screams, and there might be some singing in there, and there's going to be guitar and drums and bass, right? So, but that was probably the biggest challenge was like not having clearly defined boundaries around what I'm trying to make, which, when you start with a blank canvas, you can create a masterpiece. But it is harder to do that when you have all the colors in the world versus if you have 16 colors and you're like, okay, I have 16 colors. This is what I can work within. It's a little bit easier. You kind of limit yourself a little bit, which is important for the creative process, I think, in some aspects, but it also it's harder to find your sound. Um, and yeah, that's what I would say was probably the biggest challenge going from that genre to dubstep.
Cool. Would you say that you jumped on the bandwagon from the pop punk world into dubstep because it was like the social impact of the times? Do
Mm-hmm.
you feel that that influenced you to make that jump? Was there something going on in that scene that was negative to you, that why you wanted to make the jump? Or was there like a new artist coming out? Let's, for example, say Skrillex, for example. Did that have anything to do with you jumping the bandwagon on genre?
So I wouldn't say that had anything to do with it. What I would say, so I'll kind of give you the story of how I got into
Yeah.
electronic music. I actually always made some form of electronic music. When I first started making music, I was doing game programming, and the game engine that I was using to make these little side scroller games had a built-in tool for making background music for the game that you're making. I started finding myself never making the games and just going in there and making background music. And this is at like 13 or 14, right? So um, that was actually before I got into making any metal or punk music. So I'd always kind of done it. Now, when I originally made the switch, I was still playing in a pop punk band, and we were actually doing pretty well. We weren't having any issues. But I started using psychedelics, and this was in my early 20s. I'm 33 now, so that should not be incriminating. I'm past the statute of limitations, FBI. But but I started doing psychedelics, and I noticed that I really didn't like the music that I listened to sober when I was taking psychedelics. It was too emotionally distracting. Like whatever the subject of the song was, I just felt too much. And with metalcore and pop punk, it tends to play on negative emotions, like generally speaking. Now, I'm not against that stuff, but I don't know, it felt very angry. So I didn't know anything about electronic music. I didn't know anything about Skrillex, but the name Skrillex was in my head because he was the big guy at that time, 2014 ish.
Yep.
And so we were taking psychedelics, and I played Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites. And I actually totally forgot music was even playing. And when the drop hit, it felt like my leg got stabbed, and uh, like blood started dripping out of the corners of the walls and stuff, like on the ceiling, and just
Wow.
started seeping into the room. And I
That's
was like,
very
"Yo, what the
scary.
fuck is this?" It was terrifying, and it hurt. And then I was like, and then it was like 5 seconds, and then it was over. And then I was kind of just coasting with it. But that initial 5 seconds was so
Like the
impactful.
build into that powerful drop.
Yep. And I don't know, like I don't know, maybe I'm a masochist or something, but I was when that I was I always kind of chase that after that initial thing. I always kind of chase that level of intensity. Um, and I decided to start making that. And really, my talent had always been, I was never much of an instrumentalist. I was never that good at guitar. I was never that good at vocals. I'm okay. But I was always best at the overall composition of a track. For most of those bands, I wrote all the parts. Um, and I kind of realized that playing in a band like that in a small town, I had to rely so much on other people's ability and willingness to show up for practice and take it seriously, that became a major hindrance. So I decided to actually go into EDM because I just realized I couldn't rely on a group of people to show up and practice for me to be able to uh, build my career. Because when I would ask the other artists, like, why do you do this? You know, the main answer I got was because it's fun. And I'm not saying that's not a valid reason to do it, but it's not a sustainable reason. The other reason I would get would, people would say, oh, I want to meet dudes or I want to meet chicks or whatever. And um, that's not a sustainable reason to make music because, like, once you meet the chick or meet the dude, then what's the point?
Yeah.
Once it's no longer fun and you have to do hard work that sucks. When you're carrying up a bass amp that's 170 pounds up 2 flights of stairs, it's no longer fun. It's like you gotta, like, you have to, there has to be like a whole other drive or a reason that's a sustainable thing if you want to make it a career, because you might get lucky and while it's still fun, you hit it big and then it's even more fun. But most of the time, it's a it's a long, slow dredge to the top, and to success. Not top as in like who's better than who, but it's a journey. And
So finding responsible collaborators that would keep, appointments for, jam sessions and things like that was a big factor in you trying to jump ship and choose your own ground for your own
yeah,
projects. You have to rely on that with other people.
correct. And that's not, and I love writing music with people. I really do, but it wasn't even so it when you're in like, I'm in a small town and there's just not that many musicians. So when you're in a really big area and that there's a ton of musicians, you have some space to kind of find out who's serious, find out who's not. Here it's, you better hope the people that want to do this are serious because there's no one else. There's no one else to drum. And it's even worse now, actually. There's no bands here. Zero. When I was playing in bands, there was like 5 bands just in my small town, and we would put on local shows and bring out 100 people in a town of 10,000. Like a real small town. We would bring a ton of people out, and that just doesn't happen. The music scene is entirely dead here. EDM is the only thing that's happening. EDM and like bar scene kind of cover band stuff, but
This is
there's
in
no
Northern
like
Florida, right?
there, yes. There's no like young bands. Like there's no like bands of like 20-year-old, 23-year-old dudes who have the sky in their eyes and they're reaching for the stars. There's none of that. It's all gone.
What would
We were the
you
last.
what would you say that inspires your style of music and lyrics coming from that experience and those feelings? How
Um
do you approach your songwriting and your creativity in your style of music?
yeah, so this is actually very interesting because I've been losing my mind lately, trying to figure out who the fuck is writing my songs. Um, because when I sit down, and I'll start with lyrics. When I sit down to write lyrics, I don't feel like I'm writing. I feel like I am, uh, and I'm not trying to compare myself to Nikola Tesla or anything. He was a genius, and I'm a musician. But he talked about how when he was working on these inventions, that it was like he was channeling the information. He was not creating the information. When I sit down to write lyrics, I just start typing. I don't have a subject in mind. I don't have a, there's no specific direction that I'm going. And what ends up coming out is what I would say is the closest thing I can get to just a subconscious squeezing of my sponge brain, if that makes sense. Like I bring in my life, and throughout my life, I bring in all this information. When I sit down to write, I just squeeze the sponge, and whatever comes out is what comes out. So with lyrics, and I've actually been like kind of reviewing my stuff because I have a lot of music just on my hard drive, and like trying to overall like figure out what my message is. And I don't know, because I don't sit down and purposely try to write out messages. I just I let it flow, and then it's kind of up to the listener to decide what they get out of it, I guess.
Okay.
Um,
Let's see. How important is it for you to feel relevant with your genre and your style? Is that of
do you mean
importance to you?
do you mean relevant in the culture, like like people kind of knowing me and associating me with that genre? Is
Yeah.
that what you mean by that?
Yeah.
Um, I'll be honest. Since my inception into music, um, the only time that I've ever felt any welcome into the music scene was in New Hampshire. So I am very, very used to being an outsider and having to struggle against a current. So being relevant really doesn't matter to me. Uh, I'm not all that, like, I don't have, tens of thousands of listeners or anything. And I still just love making the music. To me, it's a form of expression and almost a form of therapy. And if other people enjoy it, then I appreciate it. But at the same time, I don't let that stuff worry me, because otherwise, you know, I would have quit by now. I've been doing music for almost 15 years in some form or another. If relevance was something that I was out, then I would have probably given up years ago.
Gotcha. Would you say that being in the scene has a big effect on your mental health and how you view yourself, or is it more for you it's an outlet for those internal feelings?
So it's both. I would say the music itself, and the being within the scene and being heard, and I don't mean like necessarily my music, just like when I show up to a show, a couple people know me, they're excited to see me. That is huge for my mental health, because I mean, we all need friends. We all need people that uh, you know I hate to use this word, but validate our existence. And for me, the music, that's kind of my release of the things that build up within me, the information and the feelings that build up, that comes out in the song. But I'll be honest, my involvement in the scene, especially here, is more as a listener. Every people, I wouldn't say everybody, but most people know that I produce and DJ. I've played a couple shows down here. They know what I'm capable of, but I play original sets. So me playing the same venue, 2 or 3 times in a month is too much, because I'm playing the same music. So
Do
I
you
keep I try to limit
feel
it a little bit.
do you feel that through your experiences as a performer that you are fostering a more deep and meaningful connection with your audience, with your friend network?
Yes, absolutely. When I when I take the stage, like, that's like I'm gone. Like it's almost like I dissolve into the collective consciousness. I don't
I
know.
totally relate to that. When I'm
You
performing on
know,
stage, everything just falls away and it's just
yep,
me up there being my most authentic self and
yep.
feeling connected in a way to people that I don't really feel in my day-to-day life. This is like my only outlet to really bridge that gap.
Yeah, and that's the way I approach shows is like I I view myself like if I'm on stage, I view myself as more than anything an entertainer. So
Gotcha.
my goal is to be as captivating and entertaining as possible, and that tends to lead to me looking like a fool and hurting myself and headbanging too much and going crazy.
I know you've
But
definitely thrown your neck out a few times. I've seen it. If you have never
yep,
seen a Fya Boy set, to our listeners, you should definitely check him out. He goes really hard. He goes really heavy, and it's his sound design is very unique. When you hear Fya Boy, you know it's Fya Boy. That's one of the things I love about his music. Is it's very identifiable.
thank you, I appreciate that.
You're welcome. What role do you think that the audience can play in driving positive change in our industry?
Ooh, the audience.
Yes. Without
I
the
think that.
audience, without the listeners and the people that buy tickets to our
Mhm.
shows, we would oftentimes our art and our feelings would fall on deaf ears.
Yes. I
Yes.
think there's two facets to this question. The first facet is one of inclusion, and the other one is a form of exclusion. So, on the inclusive side, I think the audience can be more receptive to things that are a little different. So, um, and now I would say EDM is they're pretty open minded as a genre. Dubstep specifically um, seems to be a little bit of a polarizing genre. Like I tend to see people who like dubstep really turn their nose up at stuff like drum and bass or house. And then vice versa. I tend to see people who really like house, like turn their nose up at dubstep. Like dubstep starts playing, they're out. And I think that to some extent there needs to be a little bit more open mindedness about different genres. I understand there are some genres that I just can't stand. I can't stand country. I never could. I grew up around it,
I'm with
but
you. Anything whiny, twiny, achy, breaky,
yeah,
I'm out. I'm
but
out.
but
Sorry.
but I but I will say this: in the right circumstance, if I am hanging out with some friends in the woods and we are drinking beer and there's a fire, if Morgan Wallen comes on or Luke Bryan comes on, I'm probably not trying to find my way back to civilization. It's fine. To me, it's a time and place thing. Like I don't want to hear "Achy Breaky Heart" while I'm like shopping for milk or something. I think that's a weird thing to me. But I can see like songs like "Kicking It in the Sticks" or something like that, right? Like I can see that. Like I'm drinking beer with the homies in the woods. We got a fire going. We got four wheelers. Okay, all right. Now some kind of rock and roll inspired country is fine. It's a time and place thing. As far as the exclusion part, so I wanted to get to that real quick. Um, it's not really exclusion, but I think the audience should also uh, hold the artist to a higher standard. So to
Love
some
that.
extent, I like, and I'm not disparaging anybody. Different talents, different people. That's totally fine. But one of my big experiences that changed the way that I perform electronic music was I played a house party out in Pensacola at a friend's house. She's passed on. She had a drug overdose, Um,
Sorry
but
for
so it's okay. It happened a while ago, and we all miss her. She was important in the scene, but
I think that subject is so hard for a lot of people to talk about.
yeah,
We'll
and
touch more on that on a little bit later. I'll let you finish your
sure,
thoughts, but we should talk
sure.
about the subject as well later on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. But we did this house party at her house, and at this time when I performed my music, I had built in Ableton a 8-track rack. And then I had programmed my DJ controller to affect Ableton, not Serato or Record Box. So I could use my 4-track DJ controller as an 8-track DJ controller. So I would do 8-track chopping. I would, when I would select stuff, I would select a buildup with my Ableton push, and then that would build up into 8 different drops that I could play with, if that makes sense. So I was doing all kinds of complex stuff. I'm talking some complicated loops. I was doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I was up there struggling, working my butt off, and I kind of looked around and I mean, it's a house party, not a show, so there is that. But I looked around and there was like some dude like nodding out on heroin or something, and another dude just like legitimately had a knife out and was just like scratching the wall with it at my friend's house.
That's
And of course, I got
a
somebody
little
like,
weird, a little spooky.
yeah. Well,
Blood testing shit's important, kids.
yeah. This was no kidding. Yeah, he tested it all right with his tongue. Um, But I just looked out and I was like, wow, no one gives a shit what I am doing up here. That
Would
is
you say
crazy.
that? Would you say that the impact of like where you're playing an event really changes your mind about how your performance is going to go?
Yes.
The inclusivity
100%.
versus like exclusivity. Yeah.
Yep. 100%. And basically what I mean to say by that is I think there is a little bit of a lack of standards being held to artists who are performing. And I don't
I
mean
would
to say
have
that,
to heavily agree with you on
yeah.
that.
And, I would like to see people kind of demand, and that's not to exclude people who aren't good. That is to push them to be better. And so you can say, hey, we're going to hold our artists to a higher standard,
Right.
um, without saying we don't want you part of it because you're not good. It's like, no, 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 we want you to get better. We want to encourage you. We're going to support you and all that stuff, but we want you to improve because one thing that some artists fall into is they get a little bit of like, I'll say local fame, where they're pulling 80 to 100 people to a show. They're doing pretty good, and they just stop getting better because in the environment that they're in, they're it, right? Like they've made it, they've got it, they've got the scene on lock, and
Right.
they kind of just let it. They're like, well, I've done it right, so I'm just going to coast with what I'm doing. I think I would like to see the audience push me and push other people to improve.
Let's elaborate on image versus morality.
Hmm.
Now that we're going into that spectrum of conversation, um, can you share a specific example or experience where maintaining a good image was crucial to your budding career in music?
That's everything. There's no moment. That is, you have to at all times maintain the correct image.
Okay.
And I say that because
How important do you think public perception about you as an artist is to your success?
uh are we speaking to mine personally, or
Yes, you
okay,
personally.
so me personally, I feel like there's two sides to this. Number one, I try to maintain the image that I want to portray at all times in any sort of public manner. And that is whether I'm walking around Walmart, or I'm at a show, or I'm at a house party, or I'm on Facebook shit posting. Whatever that happens to be, because today it's forever. Like you might be able to be a D bag in Walmart and kind of get away with it, people
Right.
kind of forget. But as soon as you put stuff on the internet, man, that shit's screenshotted. That's like people who don't like you, and there will be people who don't like you no matter how nice and good you are to people. There will be people that just don't like you. And they are, those people um, will look for anything that they can use. So I think for me personally, um, I try to keep a public image, but I also do accept the fact that there are people that are going to hate me no matter what I do and no matter how nice I am to them. For whatever reason, they're just angry people. So I think it is important to do the right thing. versus trying to maintain an image, just be a good person. And if you're a good person, yeah, some people may take something you say out of context, or they might try to attack you for it or whatever. But at a minimum, you'll be able to stand on your toes.
Okay. Do you think that industry expectations impact your ability to stay true to your morals?
Hmm. Me personally, no, because my morals are pretty, like, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I work, I handle my business, I help people where I can. Whatever the industry expects of me, if what I do is outside of their morals, then they're the ones that need to change. And I don't say that as like as trying to have like a big head or anything. I just, I've done enough psychedelics to call myself on my own bullshit, so I do it all the time. And
Amen. Keeping your
like
mental
I
health in
just I
check is
just
very important, and I have
yes,
went down that road with using those things in the past for that particular reason.
yep,
And without the help of those things, I can firmly say I might not be here or become the person that I am on my way to becoming in every single day without those experiences.
100%.
They're heavily defining. Um,
And they break brainwashing
they're
patterns in your head.
healing. They're healing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever faced a situation where your morals or your ethos or your image was like tested in a way? And how did you handle that situation?
Yeah, so I didn't handle it very good, I'll be honest. Because I was young.
Right.
And now as I'm older and kind of understands life a little bit better, it's actually very easy to handle. So when I was young, me coming from high school, dude, I was like the school loser. Like I did not have friends. I did not have that riz. Um, I was uh, someone who was picked on and bullied a lot as a very young kid, and then in high school that led to me being highly aggressive. Like if I even thought someone was gonna jack with me, it was on. And those kind of trauma responses created patterns that carried into adulthood. So in my first band, when we started seeing some sort of level of success, I got, let me fix that. I got really inundated with attention from specifically women that I had never received before. It was like I went from no woman had ever looked at me to all of a sudden, there'd be 50 women in the crowd trying to, talk to me and like XYZ. And I didn't handle that well. I definitely went against all of my morals and all of my better judgment. Got involved in kind of getting around town, we'll say. Uh,
How did
and
that affect your mental health long term? Like, how did you start to feel about yourself and treat others?
I started to feel like I was a tool for other people's enjoyment. Um, and that, it really didn't affect my friendships with the people that I was friends with. Um, but
Do you
the,
think that that was because the attention that you were getting was pleasurable to see through other people and they wanted to become your friend because of the attention that you were getting, that it was cool to be
yes,
like that?
yes. In fact, that's why I am not friends with any of those people anymore. I started to notice this actually with a very, very good old friend of mine, who is no longer a homie. Uh, and I kind of realized that, he was my homie for two reasons. And that's because, I could get substances and I could, women came around because, um, they enjoyed my presence, I guess. But and then he would kind of hang out with me for that benefit. When he realized that I was not going to get him laid and I was not going to be a drug dealer, uh, the friendship entirely fell apart, and as did most of my friendships. Now there are some people that wasn't the case, so I'm not like painting a wide picture, but there's a few really like big instances where that was absolutely the case. And the
I can
more that
definitely relate to you
and the
about popularity and substance usage and
mhm.
people being really friendly outwardly to you, and then when things get hard or they don't get what they want, they pull back, and you are faced with the reality that those friendships that you thought you had were not that deep. They weren't really true to who you were or who you wanted to be. And unfortunately, it sorry, someone keeps calling my phone on Messenger. I apologize. I keep
It's
hanging
all
up.
good.
So
Actually, that
excuse
reminds me. I'm gonna put mine on do not disturb real quick, so that doesn't happen to me. Okay, cool.
I apologize for that interruption. If you could keep elaborating on the topic.
Yeah, so there was a few instances of that happening, and as my morals began to, just quitting smoking weed, just quitting weed,
Yeah.
because I realized that I would smoke, and then like the people that I was working with and collaborating on stuff, they come over and be like, "All right, let's smoke and get some stuff done," and we'd be like, "Yeah, so this is all the stuff we're gonna do. Yeah, I'm really excited about doing all this stuff. Let's make all these plans and never do anything." So I started realizing that like, hey, we were making all these plans and nothing was getting done. We were just talking stoned, and it just that wasn't beneficial. So I quit weed, and I was like, hey, I don't care if y'all smoke, but I'm gonna stop. Like, y'all can come over to my house, y'all can smoke, but I'm not going to. As soon as I did that, no friends, all gone. It
So
was wild.
we're gonna switch gears a little bit here towards the tail end of this topic. What advice would you give to emerging artists about navigating the problems of image versus morality, that whole dilemma, and how they can stay true to themselves while also pushing their own success and narrative in this industry?
So I think morals are subjective, right? Like, my morals are going to be different than yours. Maybe not in
Let's go with the
large.
consensus of putting this very simply and plainly: to do no harm to other people.
Okay,
To
yeah,
to put it very, very frank and simply, so we don't have to, go too out of the box with that one.
sure. So I think the morals should be the image, right? If you are
I
living your
agree.
life if you're living your life in the moral way, that should be the image. Allow that to come forth. Like if you're let's say you're having your morals are like, hey, you don't do like heavy drugs, you're against
There's
XYZ,
nothing
but then
wrong
like
with
all
being sober or straight
right,
edge or however you want to call it.
exactly,
There's
exactly, and
people,
like I
you're in a place where people, those boundaries break down. Oftentimes, when
yep,
you're at a concert, regardless of genre, it's very important for people to understand that, like, you don't have to be on substances to enjoy being in that environment. But a
yes,
lot of times, you'll see people to be comfortable in those environments. They feel that they need to partake, to be cool, to be like that person you
yep.
want to be around. And that is completely false. You don't have to fall into that category.
And I also think the kind of substances that are around at whatever time changes that. So like people who take psychedelics, shrooms or acid or something like that, they're probably not about to drop 2 hits of acid to feel comfortable at a show,
Yeah.
right? So that's you're really looking at like Molly or drinking alcohol. Alcohol is a drug. Um, and in those cases, like, yeah, no, I'd agree. There's a lot of people who want to feel cool, but there's also, I think more so than anything else, people want to escape reality. Um,
Yeah,
and
I think that that is a truly pervasive problem when it comes
and though,
to partaking of substances. Yeah, people want to escape, they
yeah,
want to feel better, they want to be funner, they want to cancel that feeling of depression or emptiness that they have, and they want to connect to something. And that is a bridge for a lot of people starting out.
hmm
Um, And as you grow in your career, as you grow in, your fame and your audience, a lot of times you'll be approached by people because they're a fan, because they like you and they want you to partake with them to gain that closeness with you. And it's okay to say no. It's okay to say yes, but moderation. You can always take more, you can't
Yep.
take less. Be safe. There's been so many examples of this in the industry where people get a big head and they are succumbed by their own demons inside because they don't do their healing.
Yep.
So it's super important to keep in mind that, use your discretion with things and people. If something doesn't sit right with you, you should definitely trust your gut.
Yep, absolutely. And you never know who's watching. That's the biggest thing. Like,
That too.
you could be like, playing a kind of medium-sized show. Maybe there's like 80, 90 people. Some dude walks up to you and he's like, "Oh man, dude, your set was awesome. Hey dude, you want to do a bump of this cocaine?" And, next thing you know, you're like looking over to your left and some dude's like sitting there kind of judging you, right? Well, it could turn out that that guy actually books large, important in the scene shows, and you're looking like a junkie or something to him potentially, and he's like, this dude just took a line off of a random guy he's never met, freaking out of his bag, and now he's acting like a jackass. So you never know who's watching. So I would be careful with that.
Yeah.
And that's honestly here in Florida. Like, I haven't gone to a single show and done anything other than like one Red Bull and vodka. And part of that's because I know who's important, and I say important in the scene, but on the economic side, on the they're booking shows, making moves.
It's
Um,
a delicate balancing act as an artist and a business professional in the music
yep,
biz to understand the black and white and gray zones. As an artist, a performance artist, you want to be professional. You want to give the best that you have to offer for any given
yep,
situation. However, the bigger successes that you get, the larger level that you will reach, you have to be more and more careful about how your behavior makes you look as an
yep,
individual. Because if you're working with a major label or you're working at a well known venue, the backlash of one bad night could end your career. And we've seen this happen for a lot of up and coming people. We've seen
yep.
people who are really talented, their careers not blast off or bounce off because their lives are a wreck. They have no impulse control, and their ego gets larger than their ability to perform.
And I think some of that has to do with people not having purpose outside of music too.
Right.
Like I would consider music is my dream and my goal. But even more important than that is my wife and son. And because of that, it becomes pretty easy for me to say no and like, hey, like I don't need to be doing this stuff because I have a purpose outside of music. And that is something. Now, I'm not saying that everybody has to have a wife and son or something. I'm just saying whatever your purpose is in life, that goal. Well, if you're not around because you got hit with some fentanyl in a freaking pressy, well, your music goals are over. Like you could be dead, and that's scary.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna branch off and focus on some of those subjects. We're going to gear into mental health a little bit
Okay.
and trying to make the industry a better and more inclusive place.
Yep.
Um, what are some like ethical standards which should be established and increased in the industry for professionals, and the transparency and accountability of those things increase in the industry? Where do you
Ooh.
see that line?
Um. Can you repeat that question one more time?
What
Like the
ethical
just the first half.
standard what ethical standards should be established to protect artists and industry professionals in regards to
Yes.
like what we were just talking about, about how people view them and how they're behaving? Like, what are
Yep.
some established things that we should have as a standard to look out for to make the
Yeah.
industry a
So
better place for people?
as far as ethics are concerned, I think that's something that's super hard to enforce. So I think one way to kind of help that is to make contracts more normal.
Right.
Like, there is no reason that you shouldn't that you must be sober for your performance. Can't be on a contract.
I
Um,
That's kind of where I was going with the ethical standard. Like, ethically
yeah.
speaking, we all know what goes on in this industry. We all
Yep.
know people are inebriated on a substance or alcohol or any other thing,
Yep.
attention from, the opposite sex, whatever it is. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is, what can we do to have more transparency and accountability for acknowledging that we know these things go down? How can we do better at protecting people? Because I'll give an example. Somebody who we know uses a substance should not necessarily preclude them from having, for example, a record deal. But how do
Right.
we acknowledge that without it making it, allowing the space for it to become a problem? Like, how do we in the industry help people from falling prey to their own demons with their success?
I think that it is the same way that you would help a friend or your sister. You have to be willing to have the conversation with the person. So if I'm just going to imagine myself as an A&R rep at a record label, and this guy's got great music, but I see on Facebook that he's talking about, you know, eating Xanny bars, you know, right before shows, right?
There's a
I'm
difference
not.
between artistry. Like, let's say you're a rapper and you're talking about Zanny bars. That's
Yes,
an
absolutely.
outlet of that's different than actually you being the person doing it. Even though we all know that the possibility of those things being the same are probably, But
Yeah,
as an example, how do you differentiate risk versus potential? And how do you protect people? By treating people more like friends, like family, actually giving a shit about the people that you're choosing to work with and
yeah,
representation, not
because in
treating them like a
reality,
commodity.
yeah, like in reality, if you've got an artist who's really talented and he's got a drug problem, and you say, well, you're not allowed to play shows anymore because someone saw you doing cocaine. It's like, okay, well, that's not. He's not going to quit cocaine because of that. He's just going to be pissed off at you, and he's going to think the world's against him, and blah blah blah. It actually makes more sense to sit him down and have a conversation, and be like, hey, man, listen. I understand, doing substances and all that, but you need to watch yourself.
Right.
And if you continue to promote the use, not necessarily talk
For
about
your
the
art, but
subject,
but in your
but you're
personal life.
promoting it,
Yeah.
or you're selling it or something like that. Specifically dangerous substances, because we all know that not all substances are created equal. Some
Yep.
are more dangerous than others, and I think we don't have to pretend like that isn't the case when
Right.
we see things like heavy opiate use or something like that. That needs to be handled because that kills people.
Do
So
you think
um,
that in well, I'm going to go back here a little bit. When you
sure.
mentioned contracting, do you think that in contracts with artists that you should have a clause for this type of thing and a mental health professional on assist if they are in need of it and in need of break? Like, it's not a violation of their contract if they need to take some time away to reconvene
Yes.
themselves so that they're healthy.
Yes,
I feel
because I
like a
think.
lot of major labels push people too hard. They're away
Yep.
from their families. They are on the road. They're trying to fill that emptiness that they can feel by being isolated by their success. Do
Yeah.
you think that should be a thing?
Oh, 100%. It's just like with any kind of job. Like if I take a contract for like a military wiring job or something like that, there's going to be clauses in that contract for me to be able to take vacations. Now,
Right.
it's a little bit different because, under a regular employer is going to probably operate under the guise that you are not eating pressies on a daily basis, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
So
It's
they're
really
not
hard
going
to
to.
maintain a regular normal job, but if music is your career and it is your
Yeah,
job, you should be entitled to a break at some point. Let's say
yeah,
you're on a month and a half tour. When you come back, it should be mandatory that you reconvene with yourself and like have some time to be with your friends and family back at home, so that way
100%.
you don't lose yourself in it, because if you're constantly on the road, there's no chance to rest, there's no chance to really like evaluate where you're actually at until you're back home.
Which on that note, that's why a lot of people who are musicians get into certain substances because of the stress. So
Yes.
because of those stressors, so me, for instance, I have sometimes have a hard time focusing and staying on track. So something like Adderall becomes like a super pill for me.
Right.
It turns me into a superhuman, but there are
Stimulants relax
consequences to it.
me because I have ADHD. Like,
Yeah,
I was on that shit for 15 years and I was taken off of it and I couldn't get it anymore. And I was crippled for the next like five,
yeah,
6 years of my life. I couldn't function. It
yeah.
was it was insane. So I relate. Yeah. Um, we know that there's a massive stigma in our society, prevalence here, especially in the West, in all different parts of the world, that the mental health issues that people have, they don't want to hear about it. They want you to
Yep.
be a commodity, and we need to stop dehumanizing people and their issues because they're a human being.
Yeah.
Um, what kind of measures can be implemented if people could, support more mental health awareness and well-being? Because as an artist, recently I collaborated with another artist and we were making a song about how losing people to addiction made us feel, and we wanted to raise
Hmm.
awareness about that prevalence and that pain through music, to basically tell people they're not alone for having those feelings and that it's
Yep.
okay. um Tearing up a little bit. It's an important problem that we need to be more open about, especially in the business that we're in, because of the prevalence of drugs in this culture, this
Yep.
counterculture that we have.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And, mental health is, coming from like the emo and metalcore scene, like that entire genre is built around mental health problems.
You
And,
hear it in the lyrics of the music. You feel it when
yes,
you listen to those songs. When you're going through certain stuff in your life, maybe that's not your particular genre anymore. But I know for me, when I get feelings of emptiness and feelings of um, inadequacies, and I get angry and I feel that rage, that empty feeling inside, that jaded feeling, I always go back to my roots. I'm jamming out to Korn and Slipknot and OTEP and like screaming it out, and I feel so
yep,
much better because I'm allowing the space for myself to feel. Because it's
yep.
not, you can't feel good all the time. And to force people and gaslight people into believing that they have to be good all the time, it's unrealistic. It's an expectation we need to stop pushing the narrative for. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay
Oh,
to
yeah.
need
And,
to take a step back.
I can give a personal example about this, because, I struggle with some mental health issues, mainly depression. I was diagnosed bipolar, when I as an adult. I don't know if I had it as a kid. I probably did. My parents didn't believe in really mental health. Like that just wasn't
Usually,
a thing.
it comes out in your adolescence when you start hitting puberty. You start
Yeah.
to those cyclical behaviors, and if you don't have access to, a therapist or a licensed clinician, you may miss those signs and they might be dismissed as just a angsty teenager. There's
Yep.
more to an angsty teenager than rebellion, like the normal
Hmm.
capacity. I myself went through that when I was young. I almost didn't make it out of my teen years because
Yeah.
of mental health issues and problems and trauma. That's why this is super important. A lot of people who struggle with their mental health, art is their narrative to connect. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
No,
for me, that's the case. I know for you and for many of our friends, it is as well.
well, and that's, when I actually, I started having to get really good at handling it. handling it, I would say solo, but not really solo, outside of public view because, like I would, if I was feeling down, like let's say I would make a Facebook post,
Right.
and it was about feeling down. There are
Yeah.
three different kinds of responses that I would tend to get. The first response would be a response of support.
Hmm.
Hey man, I'm here for you. And you know what? That's awesome. And even though I would probably never message any of those people
Right.
about my mental health, because I personally don't want to put that burden on another person. And that's not, there are certain people that I trust enough to share in that without feeling burdensome to those people. You would be an example of that, or my wife would be an example of that, somewhere along those lines. The second response that I would tend to get would be one of dismissal, or almost annoyance. Like they're just annoyed that I'm having a sad day. That was pretty common. And then the third response, which is more rare but happens, is there are certain people who look for those moments of vulnerability, um, as a chance to pounce on something for some
Yeah.
reason or another. They are looking for, uh, oh, you're depressed. Now's my chance. Um, I had an instance with that. I won't go into too much detail with that.
Not
I just
everybody is
noticed.
your friend, and that's
Yes.
really hard to acknowledge too, especially here in the
Yep.
music biz. Like, you think you have all these friends, you think that, you know, you're on top of the world, but in reality, chances are you're very alone and isolated.
Yep. And I
Unfortunately
think,
speaking,
well, and
that
it's
needs to
more.
be acknowledged as well.
And it's more so now. Like it's actually a little bit paradoxical because we're so connected on like social media and stuff. Like there are 3,000 people on my Facebook, and yet, um, I have way less people to talk to. It is Our culture has become very atomized, and I'm not going to say that I'm outside of that. I mean, look at I do most of my music solo. I'm atomized as well. I think most of us are to some extent, especially if you don't live in a big city.
Yeah.
If you live more out in the middle of nowhere where you actually literally can't see your neighbors. I have no idea what my neighbors look like. There's trees in the way, So it's like, people have become very atomized, and that's why I think it is important to, you don't have to do everything on your own, but there are some things that only you can do. No one can fix my mental health for me. It doesn't matter how many therapists I talk to. I'm the only person that can truly dig deep enough to figure out, um, why I am acting the way that I'm acting. If there is some sort of thing that I'm doing, if I'm not getting out of bed or I'm doing XYZ, I can talk to a therapist about it. But for the most part, even if I get an answer from a therapist that I never thought about, I still have to do self work. So I think that is also important too, is, people kind of realizing that, like, you do have to do work. Being happy is work. Being
What
mentally stable.
what advice would you give to others in the industry about choosing collaborators to work with on making ethical business decisions when it comes to making art with people,
Yeah.
or performing together? What would you say are the things that you look out for to make that choice, good or bad? Like, what are some like deal breakers for you, and what are some things that are like green flags as well?
Like, oh, I absolutely will not work with this person,
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So the first thing that I would say is people who are very eager to, be angry at somebody for some sort of,
So
uh,
quick to anger without
advice.
rationalization.
Yes. So we actually had a little bit of an instance with that here. I have a friend who, he was talking to a kind of new artist, right? And this new artist was botting his music. So he was, paying some company to give him 1,000 plays on SoundCloud. It was obvious based on how if you have 20,000 plays on a song and two comments and one like, That's looking pretty botted, right? So my buddy, he was,
Unfortunately, before you continue, unfortunately, there are a lot of really talented people that don't have a lot of
yeah,
numbers, and that's also
oh
another
yeah, I'm one of
basic
them.
problem in the
Yeah,
industry as well. Is that people that are talented or that are probably fit for the job are often overlooked by those who have like numbers. And unfortunately,
yes,
just because that person has numbers doesn't mean the quality of what they can deliver is good.
and it also doesn't mean that the numbers are real.
Exactly.
And that's, that's so we had that issue here. There's a couple people botting their music, and they tend to get booked a lot because they're like, look, I got 20,000 plays on a song. People don't look too deep into it. My buddy actually, he just messaged him. He was like, hey man, I totally understand wanting to bought your stuff and might help you get some shows and stuff. But I just want to let you know that the way that the algorithm works, if you bought your stuff, the algorithm will destroy you and it will never recommend your music to anybody. It looks for certain key things, and when he
So
told the guy that, the other dude attacked him like really hard and was super angry because he caught, right?
that's unfortunate.
Yeah,
So ISR Collective as a whole, label side, we have like decent organic numbers, and it stays
yes,
at that love that threshold like on its own. Um, to me, I would like to see across the board when I'm looking to work with a new collaborator. I'm not looking for specific numbers, but I'm looking for consistency in those numbers because
yep,
chances are you might have like one really good song that you collaborated with on someone, and they might have a bigger audience than you. So you might have like mega plays on this one thing. But regardless of that, for me, I look for consistency and not just like numbers when it comes to like realism, because I'm modeling like the numbers that we have are moderate numbers
right.
out of what we have for plays and interactions and stuff like that. It's pretty average and it stays in a specific range. So that's kind of like
But
for
it's
me what I'm
very
looking for.
real. It's
Yeah,
very
very
real.
real.
What you guys have that a lot of other people don't have is your listens are not passive. So the ISR collective, the people, when a song comes out, people aren't kind of waiting for it to hit their shuffle on Spotify, right? Like they see a new song that comes out and they go listen, and they
And
are
like for each
active
one too,
interactors.
we make a
Yep.
pre-save link. So you'll know when it's coming out. You'll know
Hmm.
everything you need to know beforehand. And I think that also I wouldn't say it's cold calling, but it's like the type of promotion that we do is organic and in the home
Yeah,
network. Even though some of our
exactly.
artists are from other countries and they are from, different parts of the United States, our collective like reach, organically speaking, jumps from one pot to the next, and we put out more than one type of music, so there's something for
Yep.
everybody to really enjoy. I think that's something a lot of other labels aren't doing, is really looking past their local scene and
Hmm.
looking past just one big or one or two or three big artists that have the numbers. Like it can kind of, you can kind of shoot yourself in the foot a little bit. It's better to have slower organic progress and support over time than to just jump into a pond that you can't swim in.
A hundred listeners that wait hand and foot on your release and they wait for your merch drop and they buy your merch at shows is more beneficial than 10,000 listeners who happen to stumble across your song on a playlist.
Right.
So I think, there's also that aspect. Like I know, there are a lot of artists who, they may get 100,000, that maybe have 100,000 listeners. And I know somebody who has 100,000 listeners every month. They don't pay for promotion or nothing. However, he couldn't get a show to save his life because when it comes down to it, he may have the internet reach and, maybe the Spotify numbers, but he doesn't have the super fan, the guy that every show that he goes to wears your merch, or the dude who is that has your music on repeat, not on a playlist of or shuffle, but is just like, I'm going to sit down and listen to a Fya Boy album. Those kind of listeners, I'll take 100 of those over 10,000 people that hear my song in a playlist any day.
The other thing that we do at ISR Collective is that the network of folks that we work with, we have a collaborative folder in our Google Drive where we do music swaps. And when we have
Yeah,
experiences where some of us might get booked more than others, the support that we have from artists that we've collaborated and dropped their music, like I know for me, for example, when I get a really big show, chances are I'm going to fill that performance with the homies music who supported me to get to this point. And that's
which is
how
amazing.
we give back. It's not just about playing all the mega famous people's music who have all the streams and have all the numbers. It's like using the platform and your voice as an artist is more than just about yourself. It's like you got to give back to the people that supported you, the people that are
100%.
in your local network, who may never have heard this music before, but they know about what you guys do. They'll be like, yo, what is that? And I'm like, this is this person. And that's a chance for one more person in our network to ripple effect out there and be involved in sharing an experience of music and collaboration, even if the person's not there. I wholeheartedly
Agreed.
believe in doing that. It's one thing for big artists that have already hit a threshold to play each other's music. It's like that's a bigger pond, but it's a smaller pond if you think about it. The beauty of what we're doing is sharing at the threshold of that possibility. To me, that is really, really special and makes me feel good.
Well, not only that, but like, um, you know, people really start to love music after repetition. So,
Yeah.
when I first got into metalcore, first album I bought was an Under Oath album. I still to this day love Under Oath, and I just bought it because the album art was cool. And I'll be honest, man, the first time I listened to that album, I hated it. I did not like it. I was like, this is weird. And then I didn't really have much else to listen to, so I listened to it again. And then I was like, oh wait, actually, I kind of like by like the fifth listen through. Of course, this is a different time. Music wasn't just readily available, trillions of songs, right? Like you had to work for it. Yeah, I had dial-up internet. It took me like 17 hours to download this album, right? So, um, or I had to go to Walmart and actually like spend $20 on an album or something, and without with the oh whoops with the inundation of large amounts of music, some of that becomes a little difficult to get the repetition needed to build up a fan base. So
Yeah.
what you're doing with with the shows with playing out your friends' music, that repetition creates fans, it creates listeners.
Yeah, I believe the people involved in our collective, that is very true. You have definitely seen me perform your music out.
Yep. That
And you were super
such a
receptive
cool
and grateful for
experience.
that. And when you came back and told me about the story about how that made you feel, hearing your song in a different way for the first time, that was really special. I live for that feeling. Makes me proud to do what we do. Um, we're gonna gear more towards the social and cultural impact of what we do. Um, we firmly believe that using music as a tool for social change, and this is one of the ways and examples that we've done this, with the conversation we just had. The representation and diversity in our industry can triple, if not quadruple, very quickly if we as artists on this smaller spectrum really work together. Sure.
That space heater was making me sweat. My bad.
And you're in Florida. What are you doing?
It is like 31 degrees outside.
Dude, that's nothing.
Well, you know what? When I was 205 pounds, 31 degrees was nothing.
You're in a tank
Now
top with
I'm
a
skinny.
space heater in Florida. My mind is blown right now.
Look, I love the heat now. It is the weirdest thing. I love snow, but I like warmth now.
God. Okay. So yeah, the global impact of local events to the regional events to the worldwide events if you have a friend or collaborator from another country and you put them on your small label, let's say we're branching that bridge right now where we've had several
Yeah.
collaborators from other countries that are from different collectives, and we've done music swaps. Like, it might seem like a small ripple effect, but it's actually massive in the grand spectrum, in the grand pool that is the music biz in the world. Let's see. Having the audience expand and change with those different ears for what they're listening
Yep.
for might not be something they're used to hearing in their region or like where they're from. Like, EDM in Australia is a different vibe than here. However,
Yeah.
there are artists that we know from another collective out in Australia that have collaborated with us, and we've kind of music swapped, and it's been really beneficial because now their people are sending us music to listen to, and we're playing some of their music out here. So it's like the network might be small, but it's beautiful in the way that it's organically just like ripple
Yeah.
affecting out.
Yeah. So
Um,
I think on the question of increasing diversity and representation,
yeah,
um, this is actually the question when I was looking at kind of some of the things that you wanted to talk about that I was kind of struggling with the most
sure.
because
Go ahead, ask.
um, yeah. So I think my answer to that would be let hungry people eat.
Can you
Whoever
elaborate
they
on
are.
what you mean by that?
Yeah. So you remember Tupac had a line, the "I'm breaking in." Do you know
Yeah.
that song? So if I'm hungry and I'm knocking on the door, first I'm going to knock, and if I'm not getting fed, then I'm breaking in. Um, if you let hungry people eat, the I think a lot of that diversity and inclusion happens organically.
Yeah.
So there are plenty of people from all different backgrounds who have something to offer musically, and if you just let the people who want it uh, have access to, not now I'm not saying you let everybody in. Of course, there has to be some sort of,
Yeah.
you got to keep bad people out, right? That is
Yeah.
true. Um, but outside of that, if when everybody's eating, no one's starving, and I think that creates that inclusion.
I'll speak on the inclusion a little bit here more so than I was talking about like different pawns, people from different cultures and
Yeah,
backgrounds. For me, music, suspension music, I'm not definable by genre. I come from multiple backgrounds of music, meaning like what I like and what kind of music I make. There's no genre
mhm,
that I won't touch. There's no boundary I won't push. There's no rule that I won't break. Um, for me, I love hip hop. I love EDM, right?
yeah,
So guess what I did? I make EDM hip hop music. And then the next song I might release something heavy dubstep, or I might release something glitch hop. And now I'm standing in the realm of like collaborating, making like house music and a little bit of like drum and bass with people. Um,
yeah,
and I'm like expanding my repertoire for what inspires me. Um, so for me, diversity in music is not allowing genre to subscribe to you. Break that
yes,
mold. Like, you don't have to make just one thing to be relevant. You might tap into multiple different markets like I have myself. The lo-fi community has been really good to me. I have a lot more numbers. I have a lot more organic plays. A lot of those lo-fi people are listening to music that I'm making that's not lo-fi and still supporting me.
yeah,
It's crazy how if you just kind of like sit back for a moment and realize that genre doesn't have to be specific. You don't have to just like one thing. It's totally cool. You can make
yeah.
whatever.
That goes back to what we were talking earlier with what the audience could do to kind of. I don't remember the exact question, but we were talking about how if people kind of need to be more receptive to different genres and different vibes, because there's actually like you might not like every single genre, but
Right.
you know what? I don't like country, but I've heard a couple country song like
Yeah.
dubstep remixes that I was like,
Yeah.
yo, this why does this make me want to put a giant belt buckle on and headbang? Like this is kind
Put
of
them
dope, you know?
cowboy boots on, boy.
Yeah, got a little dirt on my
Let's
boots,
do
you know what
some
I mean?
square dancing to some dubstep.
Yeah, but it's like, but stuff like that is cool and it's interesting. And it
Yeah.
also, hearing stuff like that kind of opens you up to, maybe I'll never be a country fan.
Right.
But first time I ever heard a band called Maylane and the Sons of Disaster, and they bring in country to heavy metal, I was like, yo, this is awesome. This is like, I've never heard anything like this, right? And now when I hear country, I don't immediately throw up in my mouth. So I think that bridging of genres also makes it, also keeps, it gets rid of a little bit, gets rid of the segregation of different genres listeners.
I think too, for me, what I've noticed is having my foot in so many different creative avenues of genre blending. It has opened my mind to the possibility. Not that I didn't start out this way, but for me, I don't feel in competition with anyone. I don't feel I
Yeah.
struggle for my relevance because I do my own thing and I'm in my own lane. And that to me was a defining moment of what you do matters, because I could go to a hip hop show and 10 people know me. I could go to a dubstep show, whether it be heavy or glitchy or whatever, 10 more people know me. And some of my hip hop
Yeah.
friends are there. Like, it's mind blowing to me that you feel our society pushes us to be aggressive towards others, and competition. Like, there's no necessity for that. I don't feel like there's
No,
a necessity for that at
and
all.
and I think that that is becoming a little bit of a relic,
Yeah.
which is very exciting to me. Like I can't tell you how many times I go to dubstep shows and someone hands me a flyer for a metalcore show or a pop punk show next week.
See, I
You know,
love
like
that. I love that
yeah,
the worlds are intermingling, because
yep,
originally, way before I was into EDM, I was a metalhead. I was a pop punk head. Like, I was going to reggae shows, hip hop shows. Like, I was not in the EDM world. And then
yeah,
it just so happened that many years ago, I had two roommates that were like big house DJs. And they were like, yo, have you ever gone to a festival? And I'm like, no. And they were like, all right, well, here's a pass to Ultra, like VIP pass. Go have fun. And I'm like,
yep,
I didn't know what I was getting into. I just took the passes. I was like, oh, cool. And I went and I was like mind blown. I was like blown away. And I was like, what have I been doing with my life until this point? For many years, I went
yeah,
to shows alone. I stopped going to hardcore shows because I didn't feel my people were there. But it's like,
yeah,
I've always felt like the odd man out. Like, I was trying to fit where I wasn't meant to fit. Um,
hmm.
and it's crazy. How do you like metal and how do you like hip hop? Like, how do you go to a festival that's for reggae? I don't know. I just like all those different things. So I
Yeah,
had friends in all those pots, but those friends didn't want to hang out with the other friends. And this is like, over 10 years ago now, like closer to like 12, 15 at this point. But the times are different now. The market is saturated with multi-genre music. There's something for everybody to really enjoy. The
and
metalhead in
there's
me loves heavy dubstep, like
yep.
your music, Fya Boy, because I hear that influence that I knew and loved growing up. Um, I've changed with the times a little bit, but I can still hear that influence in your music.
Well, and I think that that overall it bridges a gap. So like most of the people who like my music, like I was doing, I've got some like stats on like what people who listen to my music, what else are they listening to, right?
Yeah.
Um, and one thing that I found, which I thought was super interesting, is the most commonly liked big artist between everybody who consistently listens to my music is Eminem. and number two is Linkin Park.
I was gonna
Now
say
my
Linkin
music's
Park. That was my guess.
yeah. Now I understand Linkin Park. Sometimes my voice sounds a little bit like Chester, because he's who I grew up singing. You know, I learned to sing to his music. But uh, but really, realistically, if you listen to my music, it doesn't sound anything like Eminem, and it doesn't really sound like Linkin Park, other than maybe like some influence. But yet, for some reason, it tends to be fans of Eminem who like my music, or fans of Linkin Park. People who don't even listen to EDM. Not one EDM artist, not Skrillex, not Must Die, not Zomboy, not one EDM artist was a common denominator in the top 20 results of that.
I recently went to a Zomboy show. Haven't been in years. I haven't seen Zomboy in years.
Oh man, I bet it was
I
amazing.
took a friend of mine that was not. She's not really in the EDM world. She's actually, I want to say, a fucking juggalo. Shout out to Lori. I love you, girl. She had the time of her life at the Zomboy show, and now she wants to go to like more dubstep shows with me. And she's like, "You're probably the only person I would go with them with because I enjoy going with you, and we have
Yep.
fun." So, her coming from the Juggalo world into my world was so beautiful. They were so receptive to her, and now she's got like dubstep friends, and I'm into it. Like, let's go.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's dive deep a little bit more here. Are there any role models in our industry currently who you think have successfully balanced their image and morality with their vision for their project? Big,
Yeah.
small,
So
anybody in the industry, it doesn't matter.
the first person that comes to mind with this question is an artist called Feed Me. I'm sure you know Feed
I
Me.
know Feed Me.
So he's the first one that comes to mind, and the reason is because this dude posts nothing on social media.
Yep, he's a ghost.
He every now and then does a couple shows,
Mhm.
and his life consists of making music and hanging out with his wife and kids. Um, so when I think of like an artist that's successfully done that, like he is successful. His money, at least
He's
a
been around a
significant
really
portion of
long time too.
yes, and a significant portion of his income. Income doesn't really matter with music, but when you're talking success, like is it sustainable? Is the way I look at it, and
Sustainability is
um,
really, really important, and
yes.
we can ask more questions about that after this one.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But I think he's nailed it. He's nailed it. Nobody accuses him of anything. I've never seen any controversy about this guy. What he
Right.
does is he makes music he wants to make. He puts out the album. People listen to it. People like it. He goes and plays a show every now and then, and he kind of just lives life as a normal guy. I think that's respectable. And at a certain level of fame, you can't do that. Like there is a level that some artists reach. People like Skrillex or Avicii or maybe even uh not not Darude. That's the Sandstorm guy. I'm blanking on his
I'm
name.
hearing it in my
I
head
don't
now.
listen to
Thank you
him.
for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. But yeah, I think Feed Me does an amazing job. Like, and I'm not even the hugest fan of his music. I like his music. His it's not something that I constantly listen to, but I really respect the fact that there's no controversy, there's no BS with him. It's just here's an artist, here's some albums. I like his
I
music.
I think too, one of the big problems is the attention that people will get for being in the public eye, and
Yes.
maintaining their image and morality in regards to, let's hypothetically say you are a married person with kids. It's really hard to deny access from people in the public eye. You have to open that door to allow people in to cause you problems.
Yes.
Um, Social media is so easy for you to reach out to an artist that you like, and chances are you're going to get hundreds of messages from potential fans and collaborators, but it's like you don't have to open the door and be overly friendly to people, but you do and you should be friendly. However, the more people that you allow access into your personal life that you're interacting with can cause you problems down the road if you're not careful. Some
Yeah.
people think if you're too friendly, you're flirting. Some people think that if you message them back, that's giving them access to you. Um, Balancing the initiative here is important. I think accessibility to you have the power to put that delicate balance into place. And I think too
Yeah.
many people allow too many outside influences in. Um, you see more common now that bigger artists will post things about their families online, and I think
Yeah.
that trying to do that tries to hinder people from their interest in getting to know you on a deeper level, but it also is a way for you to shield yourself from the potentialities of people that want to cause you harm, but it also opens the door to that too. um
Yeah.
so having a really strong sense of, right and wrong and boundaries when it comes to protecting yourself as an artist and allowing people to know stuff about your personal life, like who your spouse is,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. Like that is can to be to some people an open invitation,
Yes.
unfortunately speaking. And that just speaks to the degradation of our society, that people who are famous, some people want to destroy your like life because they want what you have, not realizing what you've given to get to that point.
And
You got
not
to be
even
really
just if you're
careful.
famous.
You got to be really careful.
Yeah. And even if you're not famous, even if you're just having some moderate success in the local scene, it'll
Well,
be on a
yeah,
different scale, but it still happens. I
yeah,
can't tell you how many like relatively like successful local artists I've watched be destroyed. And, not even for anything like that I would consider super important, but, that maybe something taken out of context, or maybe they had a stupid opinion in 2004,
yeah,
and someone brings that up and they're like, dude, I don't even think that anymore. Like,
yeah.
but that's that is a thing. And I think being able to handle that kind of stuff, because once you're big, it will happen,
You
even
got
if
to
you
be careful
completely
who
lock
you
down.
choose to interact with.
Yep.
Like, I'm pretty sure my artist Instagram is not public.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I pretty much have everything public. I just am very careful what I post, and it's normally all either shit posting or my music.
True.
Cause I'm like, y'all don't really need to know my business. Every now and then I might post like a fitness like update or something, cause I'm proud of that. I've
The
always had a
other thing
problem with
too,
fitness, but
the ethical consideration here, is that the more active you are on social media, it doesn't necessarily pertain to you having a bigger audience. It's the people that are consistently interacting with you that you don't know. How many of those people have you noticed actually show up to your show, but they don't interact with you?
zero,
So
zero.
I have had a few people come up to me and call me by my artist name and talk to me about stuff they've seen me post online, and I can
Yeah.
never get used to that. I'm grateful for the support, but it's like you coming at me like you know me is a little scary to me. Like, I realize I'm in a public eye, I'm a performer. You might listen to
Yeah.
my music or jam out to me with a show, but it's like, yes, I'm going to be friendly to you and respectful of, the effort that you've put into the support. But at the same time, it's a little scary for me sometimes because these people might know details about stuff in my personal life. It's like, I don't know you. I
Yeah.
don't know you.
Well,
So
and
I'm
that's
really
that.
careful about that.
And that's honestly like exactly what you're talking about. Like that really doesn't happen to me. It used
I
to,
don't know if
back when I
it
was
has
playing in
to do with the
bands.
fact that, I might be a female, but it's like both male and female people do this to me.
That's
Um,
part of it. People feel a little bit more comfortable
I've had
approaching.
several males who are also performers tell me that as well, that it's a little bit different
Yeah.
how people interact with you. We've talked about this before as well. Um, Regardless of that, I think it's important to, if you're a performing artist, how inclusive, your partners in life are to that,
Yeah.
how receptive they are to people interacting with you, and how friendly they can be, overly friendly they can be. That too is like a huge boundary. It's like, how do you deal with that? How do you,
Well,
you know,
well, and also
it's
like
a hard one.
assuming the intentions of the person that is approaching you are innocent and pure,
Not
then there
always.
really isn't. But
Always.
they're not. They're
They're
not
not
always, and
always.
me and my wife actually struggled with this with my first band. So we got married about 2 years into my first band, and that was something very hard for her because um, it was obvious the intentions of a lot of the people that were approaching me were not pure. And people were directly trying to put a wedge between me and my wife. Like that was a constant thing we dealt with.
It's
And
not
what it really
okay.
came down
It's not
to,
okay.
no, what it came down to though was me personally, I had to be mature enough to say, I have what I want and what I love in the person that I'm with. And these other people that are approaching me and that these people that want something from me, that want to, use me as a tool or whatever. Um, those people, all I'm going to do is appreciate them for listening to my music and, you know,
Rocking out to your set. Yeah.
thanks. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. But, over time, me and Michelle developed that level of trust to where she didn't have to worry about that stuff. And now she's like, I don't know, I'm not worried about what these people are doing or him being propositioned or anything like that, right? Like so she's no longer really concerned about it. She knows she can trust me. And, beyond that, I just have to be careful how things look just in case someone like wants to hurt me and then like message Michelle, oh, he was talking to this chick or something. But she knows what's true. So it really is about trust because especially if once you get big, that stuff is going to be a millionfold.
Yeah.
So you have to be capable of, as the
If I get
person
one weird,
being,
if I get one weird vibe from somebody, I'm just gonna hit that block button. I'm sorry.
yeah,
I'm just gonna
yep,
one weird vibe. I'm
100%.
out. I'm out. I'm too
If
nice.
I get if I get some weird vibes from somebody, I just,
Block
sorry.
button. Block button.
Yep. If I get weird vibes from somebody, I may not even block you, but me and my wife are gonna laugh at the message. I'm gonna show her. We're gonna joke about it.
Oh man. Another thing too I want to talk about is as an artist promoting your brand and your music. A lot of times you might like send people messages to like, "Hey, I'm going to be playing a show. You should come. Hey, I'm dropping a new track." And while that is an open invitation for you to get new audience, there are some people that take that to the extreme. Like, you're not
Mhm.
going to show up at somebody's show because they sent you, "Hey, I'm going to be playing this show," and expect like some weird interaction, like, even though you've not even had a conversation. Like, why is that a thing? What is the delulu of people that think that?
I think people are attention deprived. So just you messaging them and I don't know if it's different. I'm as a man, I can only speak on
Personally,
how men,
I do
you know.
not hit up people and send invitations like that. I only
Yeah.
talk to people that I know that are my friends like that. I
So
do
I
not
used
talk to people that I don't know and tell them,
yeah,
"Hey," like, because I've seen them at another show of mine or they might like
right.
this or that. Like, I don't know you, so I'm not going to go out of my way to um, open that door for potential problems. I only deal
Yeah.
with people I know.
And that is actually something that I would say is also different about the EDM scene. Back when I was playing in metalcore and pop punk, it was get as many people in that door as you can.
I don't personally
And
like being approached. It makes me uncomfortable. I like being a
yeah,
performer. I like the artistry. I like the connection that I feel with people, but it's very overwhelming for me after I get off that stage when people come up to me. Like, I'm so grateful. I love that. But use your discretion with it, because some artists like myself and some others that I know, we're pretty antisocial.
yeah,
We love what we
most of us
do.
are.
We love what we do, but it's very uncomfortable for us to be put in consistent situations like that.
Well, and for me, like by the time I'm off set, like I'm pouring sweat. Like
Same.
I might throw up. I
Same.
feel my neck hurts. I'm sore. And then immediately people are like, "Oh, your set was so good." And they want to give me a hug and I'm just drenched in sweat. And I'm like, "Do you probably shouldn't, we should high five or something, but yeah, that is always a weird thing to me. Like I try not to do this now, but like I have a habit of as soon as I'm off stage, I try to just go outside.
That's
Like
what I do.
I need,
I go straight outside.
yep,
I
yep.
go straight outside. I'm
Cause,
I'm
and
I'm hyperventilating almost. I'm shaking. I'm like
yeah,
spazzed up. When I jump off that stage and you're coming at me, I'm like, hold that thought. Give me a minute.
what I've started doing is trying to use that opportunity to have some CDs or cards or download cards or something on me. And when people come up to me and they say like, "Hey, that was an awesome set," I say, "Oh man, I appreciate that. Here, I wanted to give this to you, and I saw you enjoying the set, and maybe you'll like this." I try to turn that into a sales opportunity,
Yeah.
essentially. Um, and I think that I learned that in doing insurance sales, like every opportunity is a marketing opportunity. So I try to look at it from that point of view now. And that's helped me to some extent, but it's not a perfect system, right? Because now I gotta hold CDs or I gotta
Yeah.
put something in my pocket. Man, the business cards are all sweaty and moist now.
You should
But
get a dot card.
I've been looking at that actually, and that looks super sick.
I got
Yeah,
Charlie one for Christmas, and
that's the one that has the NFC scanner thing in it.
it has a little scanner thing in it. You just put your phone
Yeah,
next to it and like pop.
yep, those are awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. Um, so we're gonna change gears a little bit here. We're gonna talk more about fair compensation,
Hmm.
contracting, things of that nature. Some sustainable practices that we can do to reduce waste, I guess you could say,
Yeah,
practices. And this is in regards to bigger events and festivals and things like that. A lot of time people will overspend their budget. Less is more, in my opinion. Um,
yep.
I believe that it should be the role of people, facilitators who are throwing an event, to have more sustainable practices in hand. What are
Yeah.
some things we as producers of events can do better for our artists in their contracting, and to possibly our vendors and other collaborators on the events?
So here's what I would say. And I'm going to kind of give an unconventional answer, and I've had people get mad at me about this answer. So bear with me.
Go
Um,
ahead.
I think that now I don't promote that other people operate like this, but I can just describe how I operate. Um, if if there is a show that has an expectation of 90 people, and someone comes to me and says, "Hey, we want you to play. We got $150 guarantee." Um, if they are not telling me that I can't play my original music and they are allowing me to play the set that I want, I think of that $150 as a marketing fee for me, because I'm confident in my ability to play a show and I turn a significant portion of those listeners into fans or potentially merch sales or whatever. The way that I operate is when someone hits me up for a show and they offer me money, um, I tell them, "Yeah, cool, man. Tell you what, take that $150 and market the show with it." Because I would rather play to an extra 30 people than have $150. I can go make $150, in a couple hours doing some random work. And if I'm on Facebook, right, and I'm trying to get 150 people to hear my song, like verified, they clicked on the link, they listened to the link. That cost is probably in the range of 80 to $100. Whereas uh, I would rather at a show have more people than now. If I'm playing a big festival or something, okay, we're talking, that's different. That's different.
Okay.
The money should be there. And if you are throwing a really big festival, even just a medium sized festival, more than 500 people, there's no reason that can't be profitable. So I definitely think everybody should be paid fairly.
Right.
When it comes to smaller shows, I personally, and I understand some artists are like, no, I'm not playing for free. I get it, and I don't fault them for it, and I totally understand it.
A lot of people
My
disregard the cost or the time it takes for someone
Yep,
to prepare or drive to an event. And I feel
yep,
people should really take those considerations. Not
yep.
everybody has the privilege of having a newer vehicle. Not
That's
everyone
true.
has the privilege of being able to call out of work to travel 2 hours there,
Yep.
play, find a place to pay to park, and then drive 2 hours home, not realizing that that's like, I don't know, $75 worth in gas.
Hmm.
Um, and time that they're not spending at their jobs where they're
Yep.
I try to be fair about that. If I have a budget for a show and I hit people up and I use my discretion, be like, this is what I'm offering, I can afford to pay you. It's flexible. Let me know if we can work
Yep.
something out. If not, that's fine. I'll find someone else.
Well,
Um,
and I think
Fair
I think
compensation is
artists.
important. I think
Yeah,
people need to advocate for themselves.
I agree, and and I think that artists they're kind of relying on music as like some source of income. Like a lot of DJs are like that, right? Like
Yep.
DJing is their job. They DJ nightclubs, they do whatever, Monday through Thursday, and then maybe they can play a EDM show on Friday or Saturday. Um, and I think it really comes down to each individual artist and what your actual situation looks like. Like for me personally, if I spend $70 driving out and playing a show to 100 people, I don't. I spend $70 going to Whataburger. You know, so to me, it's like if I need it, then I'm expecting it, and I always expect that people who want to hire me are going to offer something. If they don't offer anything, then I'm like, okay, wait a second, that's weird. So I like to be offered, and then for me to say, take this, put it towards the show. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Pay your other artists. I'm
Mhm.
okay. I can take a $70 loss. I think of that as like that's my cost of collaborating on the show if I can afford it. If I can't now, if someone's telling me what I can and can't play, then that price gets steep. Like I do weddings and stuff, and they're like, we want Kesha, Pitbull, and Luke Bryan. While you're like, I'm not coming for less than $600. So if it's if I have to play that, like, and I actually build like my life and the way that I make my money around not having to rely on um, electronic music as a source of income. So I make the money that I need in as short as time as possible, and then I do I have a very high fee for certain events. Weddings would be an example, or if I was playing a big festival, I probably have a pretty good fee. Um, but for like local shows and stuff, I would actually feel very guilty if a promoter put me on a show and I brought 7 people, and then they had to out of their own pocket pay me. So now that is not advice. Like I
Okay,
really don't advocate for myself
I'm
very
gonna
hard when it comes to
I'm
that,
gonna stop
but
you right there. So, because I understand the business from both the production of show side, label side, business wise, and as an artist, my standpoint on this is a little bit different, and it might be a little
mhm,
biased considering the experiences that you know that I have had by
yep,
doing this type of work. Um, for myself, I chose to take less shows and advocate for myself in fair treatment and contracts when it
yep,
comes to production work and booking as an artist. I've been shafted a lot of times, um, where I was promised one thing and not delivered that.
yep,
And I put a lot of work and effort and time and practice into my sets. I curate a set specifically for the event that I'm playing. Big or
Yep.
small, doesn't matter to me. I care about the artistry and the value that I bring when I put into the experience in preparation for it. It's not just I've loaded in my USB and I just pick a bunch of songs. I practice my sets.
Yeah.
Every single show, I practice my sets. I curate a unique set for each one. So to me, that in itself is valuable. Um, I know one, what people want to hear. Number two,
Yeah.
I know what I like. Number three, I want the wow factor as
Yeah.
well. I like to bring something new to the equation every time. That's why I'll hang you in suspense like a little sloth from a tree. You don't know what you're going to get with me. Like, hence suspension. You might get a heavy dubstep set, but in the middle of that set, you might get something unexpected. You might get a little
Yeah.
drum and bass, or you might get a house track or two, and you're like, what? And then I might drop something like like Mars Volve and like
Well, and that also too, when you're doing your sets, uh, you're curating a very specific set list. There are things that you're doing that are specific to that show. Generally speaking, when I'm playing a set, I'm playing entirely originals, and when if I'm playing like music out that is not mine or not my friends, then my attitude is entirely different. If I'm able to perform um as my with my originals and stuff, I view it as marketing. So it's kind of two different. It really depends. Like if someone comes to me and they're like, "Hey, we don't want an original stuff from you. We want a dubstep set of the kind of music that we know people like." Then I'm like, okay, hey, I'm now at that point, the audience is choosing how I entertain them, if that makes sense.
yep,
So
gotcha.
that becomes more work for me. Whereas if it's original stuff, then it's like, man, I'm just getting to show 100 people my tracks, and almost entirely all those people have never heard it. So I view that as kind of the trade off. It really depends. If
So
I'm good, sorry.
so as well, whenever I'm approached by a booking opportunity as an artist, I will ask what type of vibe we looking for this.
Yeah.
I have a better idea of what to prep for this. And
Yep.
then I use my discretion from there. I branch off those ideas and incorporate other things. So it's not just specifically one thing with me. The
Yep.
next thing I ask is, you know, um, the pay, arrangements of that as well. Um, the contractual agreement for me would be number one, what's the vibe of the event? How long is the performance going to be? Where is it going to be? And then I ask about, the payment and stuff like that. For me, is where I'm at with that. I
And I also think you're in a little bit different of a situation too. Like you genuinely have more draw than I do for a show. So like if you're going and playing a show, there's going to be 10 to 15 people minimum, I'm assuming, that are coming because you're playing and because you are selling tickets.
appreciate that vote of confidence.
Yeah, no, and well, I've seen it. I've seen it. Like most of the people that I played to up in New Hampshire were people you and Charlie brought to shows. So to me, I'm thinking like, I get the opportunity to show new people my music, um, and therefore, I appreciate that. So I'm like, how can I give back? I cannot be, financially burdensome. You know.
It was truly very special when you moved up here and we got to work with you in person and put you on up here. How was your experiences with that coming from Florida to up
Mhm.
here and going back home down to Florida? How was that experience for you? Like, what was the biggest things that you learned about the differences in the scene regionally speaking and the
Yeah.
differences of people? Your answer might be a little biased considering um, Charlie and I do more than one thing. We are artists, but we're also like business professionals in the biz too. So
Yeah.
it might be a little bit biased of an answer. But I'd love to hear your experiences on how the differences are.
Yeah, so when I first started making EDM, I was basically without, no, actually explicitly, but mostly unexplicitly and implicitly, I was 100% ostracized from the outset. And this being somebody that I produced, but I didn't know how to DJ. When I first started making dubstep, I didn't even know that you played it out on decks. I had no idea. I was making dubstep and did not know that you were supposed to play it out on CDJs. I don't know. I knew nothing about it. And when I first entered the scene, I faced a lot of obstacles. People who they had already kind of tied down the scene, and they kind of felt like they had it on lock. And there were a large portion of people who I'll give an example. I was told by somebody that I needed to prove myself. Now that is vague. If I've ever heard of a
Where
vague
was that
response,
from? That was a kind of
yeah,
arrogant statement, but
yeah,
I understand where that might have been from. They might have considered you
yeah,
competition.
yes. And, and which was interesting because they were like, well, you have to prove yourself before we'll put you on shows. And, my thought is prove myself as an artist and
Right.
as a performer. So my first thing was, okay, well, all the people throwing shows are telling me I need to prove myself. Well, I don't know how else to do that other than throwing shows and then playing the show and then getting video of it and showing proof, right? That was my thought. Now I don't know what they meant, but when I started doing that, then they were like, "Oh, you're trying to take the scene. You're competing with us, blah blah." And I'm like, "You said to prove myself. What is it? What? Can you give me like a actual answer?" So I faced a lot of direct. It was very clear I was unwanted in the scene down here, and then as my production and DJing skills improved, I started throwing shows. Then it became even worse because at that time, and this is like 2019, 2018, the experimental bass had completely taken over this scene. So you could not go to an EDM show where there was anything else other than experimental bass and house music. That just
Gotcha.
didn't exist.
I'm gonna stop you,
So
pause you right there. I can relate to that interaction that you had with that guy. I think in the last year for me, before last year, I was popping on lineups everywhere, all over the
yeah,
up here, and someone caught wind of that and made some nasty comments to me, being like, "Why is your name on all these lineups? What makes you so special?" And because I had commented something, but like, I'm a multi-genre artist. I play different things. I can cater a set to a specific event, and I think that's what makes me marketable. And it pissed
yes,
the guy off. He was just like, "Bro, you don't deserve to be playing on all these lineups just because you do that." And I'm like, that's not what I was even talking about. I'm just saying, like, for me, bookability is having that um behind my back. You know what I mean? Like, I can
yeah,
do more than one thing and do it well. And that is what was getting me a lot of traction when it was going down. And then that through that experience made me kind of like pull back and being like, am I being selfish? No, actually I'm not. The people that want to book me want to book me.
yeah,
Like, I don't control the aspect of bookability for myself. Other people come to me. So it's like, why are you mad? I
yeah,
don't understand. Why are you hating? And ever since that went down, because they actually have a lot of power with booking bigger events, since that went down, my bookability has gone down as well
yeah.
because of how I feel about myself, and because I'm also, advocating for myself that, like, I'm not just gonna put my energy out there for nothing at this point and be treated
Yeah.
like that by my peers. I'm gonna keep my peace. I don't need that. I don't need to play 10 shows this year. I'm cool. Anyway,
Well, and
continue.
yeah. So, well, when I came to New Hampshire, and actually, what you say actually makes me sad because when I came to New Hampshire, it was unlike any music scene I'd ever been part of. And I mean, you know this story, but I'm going to tell the story for anybody
Yep.
listening.
Let's go ahead and
My
hear
first
it.
my first experience doing any music in New Hampshire, it came from me and you were friends from a long time ago. We had been Facebook friends, spoken, and um, I actually went on Facebook and in some group and I was like, hey, where are the EDM shows at? And someone commented Interstellar Rabbit Hole. So I clicked on it and it was the only page out of all the pages that I had a mutual friend who liked the page. And there was an event up, and or no, there was no event up, but I messaged you because you were the mutual friend that liked the page, and I was like, "Yo, how did I move up here? I'm an hour away from you. That's crazy, right?" So then you were like, "Hey, are you coming to my show?" And I was like, "What do you mean your show?" And you're like, yeah, I run Interstellar Rabbit Hole. And I was like, no way, that's crazy. So after that, we met, we hung out a couple times, and you brought me out to to Charlie's basement. And by far, that was at that time, especially in EDM, that was the most successful
It
show I'd
was
ever
the
played.
pyramid scheme stream.
Yes, and
The basement party,
there
yeah.
yeah, and there was like, I mean, there was like 30, 35 people there, and everybody was receptive. Everybody was excited to hear me, excited to see me. It was the first time I'd ever felt accepted walking into a music scene. That's never happened. Every single other scene that I've ever tried to enter has come with massive resistance, and I didn't feel that in New Hampshire. And um, it really felt very community driven, and I actually learned how to navigate a music scene without my past traumas dictating how I approach it from the outset. So after leaving New Hampshire and moving back down to Florida, um, I've actually been received pretty well. Now that doesn't mean I'm getting booked all the time, but the promoters and bookers who are throwing shows, they have no issue with me. And they don't book me as a large amount because I do play original sets. I'm pretty rigid in how I promote and how I perform sets. I'll sometimes throw some homies music in there, but I'm pretty rigid on that. And because of that, it doesn't really make sense for me to play the same city, 7 times a year, and give them,
Right.
one new song each time I play. So I kind of hold myself back from playing too many shows, but just so I don't
I've
burn
I've
people
I've
out.
definitely pulled back as well, and it's
Yeah,
one for my mental health, two because I don't like drama, and three because I put so much effort into my brand and
yeah,
performance as an artist. Like it's one of the things I get really stressed out when I have a big show coming up, and I
hmm
hit the books, which for me is the decks, but um, I
yeah,
will practice the set. I'll tweak it. I don't like something, I'll take it out. I'll like redo the whole thing a couple of times, and then I'll practice for at least minimum 10 hours before every show.
yeah.
Every
That's
show I
impressive.
practice for at least 10 hours.
I'll be honest, I don't practice. It's actually probably a problem, but I mean, but it's, I got the practicing done and my set's pretty, it's not complicated. The main thing I have to constantly practice is my vocals because, you know, I can't get the live auto tune to work right, so I actually have to like sing
Oh, it's
correctly.
terrible. It's
Yeah, it don't
terrible.
work right. It,
No.
it I
Never
try, and
always run your microphone through the decks. Don't let the sound guy do it.
I'll do you one better. Normally I bring
Every
my
single
laptop.
time the sound guy has fucked me over, and I'm like, no, I'm just gonna run my own shit through my deck. Thanks.
Yep. Well, yeah, and also like you want to be able to control your mic volume because sometimes you may need to
Exactly.
be a little louder, sometimes, and when that's going to happen. They don't. What I do is I run my vocals through my laptop. So I bring my laptop and actually run it through my interface into the decks. So that way I can do vocal effects.
That's
I
kind of
can
what I
add some
was
compression.
suggesting. Yeah.
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 And if you got a fast computer and you can do it, and they allow you to bring a laptop on stage, some places for whatever reason don't
Also,
like that.
great point that you brought up. Artists should advocate for themselves in their tech writers the needs for their performance. You as the performer
Yes.
being asked to be booked, you have every right to ask for the equipment that makes you comfortable to play, or you can do what
Yep.
I like to do, or Charlie, provide our own equipment that makes us comfortable.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with asking for that. Now, the people that you don't want to work for will make a problem out of that.
Yes. And I will
What if
say,
you
like
are being
here,
booked and your booking agent is giving you a hard time about asking for your requirements so that you're comfortable and you could play the best set possible? There are probably people that you don't want to work with.
and I've noticed, on that note, one thing that has been a little bit of a struggle for me. I have a relatively expensive set of decks. It's a Newmark NV2 or NV3. It's got the digital vinyls on it, and I am super comfortable on that. But there's a big problem. It's like 100 pounds,
Yes. And I
and
know
it's
because I set
huge.
this up for you.
Yeah, it's huge, and it does make
It's
teardown.
clunky.
Yeah, it makes teardown difficult. And well, one issue I've run into is like, people just expect for you to just know how to use a $3,000 pair of, set of Pioneers. Like
Not
it's
everybody
like,
does. It
yeah, and
intimidates people.
yeah, and now
It
I'll be honest,
intimidated me as well.
I
I completely
I love the
sympathize.
I love CDJs 2000 and up. I'm good with them. I can do my set. But one thing I've noticed is like it's an expectation that you know how to play on the most expensive possible equipment before you even play.
Yep.
And then they're like, well, you don't know how to play on these decks, so you can't play the show. And it's like, well, how am I going to learn how to play on the decks? They're like 3 grand. Like I can't just go, drop a freaking
Accessibility then
car.
goes back into the sustainability of things.
Yeah.
Not everybody has the privilege to learn how to play on those before they are able to get booked. And
Hmm.
getting access to them, if you're lucky, you have a friend who has a pair or an older model that you can practice on because renting them
Yep.
is really expensive as well. Um,
Yeah.
the other thing, too, I want to point out about gear usage is I prefer Denon. I love Denon. There are
Yeah.
some capabilities that Denon has on the deck that I like to use, which is the Prime 2 is really great. They have like a lot of like really fine-tuned control over FX and things like that. And they also have a digital menu for digital like touch FX.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people will hear me play songs that they have heard before and I play it in a different way that they've never heard before because my mix style is very unique to me. And
Yeah.
I fine tuned that through the use of Denon, its capabilities. Now, to try to transcribe that specific playing style to another type of deck, like a Pioneer, is impossible. It does not have
Yeah.
the same capabilities. So I can't play the type of set the way that I want to without being on what I'm comfortable with, how I want to mix. Like
Yep.
it's just the capability is just not there. The standard of industry is there, but it's like you're not going to get the best out of me that
Yeah.
I can give. I I can play on Pioneer, the CDJs, but they are not my go-to. If I can play on my own stuff, I will. But if I need to
Yep.
play on those for ease of interest, like if I'm playing earlier in the night, or midway through, and there's no break after me to like switch back over, I'm totally cool with it. I don't want to cause an issue or distress. So I have allowed myself the capability to learn new things, but I also have to try that much harder to make a set really perfect and really clean because I don't have the capability to practice on those, but I still will practice my sets on when I'm comfortable with at home in regards to
Yep.
those situations, but I might need to improvise live at the show, which is what I have been doing the last couple of events I played. I played on
Yeah.
those and um just for me, I feel um they're just not for me. Like personally, like if I had the extra skrill, I would buy it and I'd practice on them and I'd find ways to sound closer to myself as an artist on those. But some of the digital capabilities are just different tech wise.
Yeah.
So I just want to put that out there that you know, sometimes you won't get the best from an artist if they're not comfortable.
Well,
And we
not only
need
that,
to
but coming
more
from other
patient.
genres,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and coming from other genres, like breaks between sets and backloading was always pretty normal. I don't really understand, like, like it's not
Why
like
it's an
people are
issue
gonna
now.
leave the, yeah, it's not like people are gonna, and if you go to a big festival, there's breaks between the artists. They're
Oh
not
yeah.
all mixing smoothly into one another. Like there, you got a little bit of an intermission, maybe a couple minutes to load in, load out, do whatever you got to do. Um, but I don't know. I mean, I understand it to some extent because there is a level of smoothness that comes from everybody kind of playing on the same piece of equipment. You know, my song, my set's ending, and someone else can mix smoothly into it. I get that, and you know that if everybody is prepared and works on that equipment well, then that does lead to a pretty smooth transition. But most of the time, when I'm, you know, if I like, let's say I'm done on the decks and it's time for the next guy to start playing, uh, there's still a break. They're not mixing smoothly out of my set.
Right.
The music stops, they talk for a little bit, and then they start their set. I mean, even with, so I don't know. I don't really understand the requirement to not use your own stuff. But I will say, um, when I've played some shows down here, there would have been no room for me to actually set up my equipment.
That is
So
part of the issue too, is the room necessary. CDJs
yeah,
take up a large amount of space. Whereas
yeah,
if I brought my deck or yours, it's about the same lengthwise. Mine's a little bit less heavy, but
yeah,
um it doesn't take up as much space as the CDJs at all. Like a quarter of the space, I would say.
yeah. What we used to do when we would play, when because we would do smooth transitions between the different sets, but the way we would do it is I would have my decks on the just they're just set up ready to go, and then other people would use the inputs of my decks to mix two or three decks into that, and then when it was your turn, you just came up and went straight to your decks, and we just on the main decks would swap. Okay, now we're on track two, which is actually your setup. So that's how
The
we
other
worked
thing
it.
too, on certain Pioneer models, like where the faders are and line up to the decks are not the same like as they are on Denon. So that's one thing you got to get used to too, because this number might not equate to the
Yep.
one next to it. It might equate to the one to the far side, to the far right. It
Yeah.
depends on how the
Or
person set it up. So
it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4
yeah,
instead of 1, 2, 3, 4.
yeah, or two
Yeah.
or 2, 6, like it'll be like 1, 4 fucking 2, 5.
Yep.
I'm like,
100%. It's
why? I don't
yep.
like it.
Yep.
Also, what's the deal with Denon and the screen being like orange and red? Who thought that was the best color to look at when you're mixing? It
Orange and
fucks with
red.
my eyes. Dude, I have to wear sunglasses on stage to mix with those. Give me, please give
What?
me, yes, please give me like my Denon with like the blue and green. I'm way better at
Yeah.
that. It's way easier on the eyes. It's cleaner
Orange
to
and
look at.
red.
I don't like it.
I'm colorblind.
I don't like
Like
it.
with red and green. So anytime red is involved in something that I need to be able to differentiate, uh, that sucks. That's rough. But I think
Yeah.
honestly, the roughest decks I ever played on were a pair of CDJ 1000s, where you don't even have like hot
No,
cues,
that
you don't
sound
have
rough.
a real waveform. I played a set on one of those, and it was fully by ear. I've never had to do that. You know, I've always at least been able to see the waveform, and that was super. That I had to focus so hard on just making sure the transitions worked.
The other thing too is I don't DJ with headphones.
Yeah,
I don't do
it's
that.
rare I
I've
put mine on.
never DJ'd with headphones, and some people ask me like, "How do you do that?" And I'm like, "Have you ever been to one of my shows? The proof's in the pudding. You don't need
Yeah,
it. You don't have to. I'm not relying on um just my ears or just what I'm looking at. It's a combination of the two. I just know how the things work together.
Yeah.
Um, that works for me. I don't know about other people, but for me, knowing the songs you're mixing as
Yes.
well
And
as where the drops are, where the vocals are. I don't use cue points. I've never used cue points. I don't
yeah.
need that. And people are like mind blown. They're like, how do you, no headphones, no cue points? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. And I'll say like, I'm kind of the opposite. Now, I really don't use headphones.
Live
It's
mixing,
rare.
live
Very
mixing, like,
sometimes if I'm like, okay, I want to do something that I've never done, I haven't even practiced it, and I just have an idea on stage and I want to try something, then I may use it to kind of make sure I get it right. But with cue points and stuff, I'm actually a huge planner. Like I go through and I make sure my music is beat gridded, like on a quantum level. And then same with my cue
I like to
points.
make sure
Like
about that too.
well, and the only reason I do that, like if I'm just DJing, I don't need that, you know. But a lot of times I'm also doing vocals at the same time. So I'm there might be times where I have to be singing and cue up a track at the same time. So that's when it's like I better have this because I'm jumping around, headbanging, and I've got a microphone in one hand and I'm trying to not break eye contact with people while I'm singing, and then I'll like try and, get it queued up. And but yeah, it's not necessary. Like, it's because, and you better get good at not having to do that, because if otherwise you might end up on a pair of CDJ 1000s, and now all of a sudden you're scared. So yeah, it's good. You're like
So
being
we're
capable. Sorry, go ahead.
no good.
I would say being capable of mixing with
Yeah.
absolute bare minimum visual feedback that's important, because you never know what you're going to be playing on. So, and something may break. You could be playing and your screen breaks. And then it's
Yep.
like, oh, can you operate without that? If you can, then the show will go on, and if you can't, it's going to be rough.
So we're gonna switch gears. 2 hours 11 minutes in. If got time for questions.
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit. Am I still good?
Yeah, I can hear
Can
you.
you hear me? Cool.
Yep, I can hear you. We're about
Yeah, I think
two hours 11 minutes in. Do you got time for a few more questions?
yeah, absolutely.
All right. So I know that you are quite the sound engineer. Um, can you give us a little bit of feedback on what it's like for you to help individuals mix and master their music? And feel free to use me as the example. I have
Yeah,
learned so much as a producer from Brandon. Without Brandon's help and patience with me, I may not have ever gotten to the point where that I'm at and where I'm going. So I just want to say thank you for that. Um,
of course.
so, what's your approach here for those types of things, services, and all that? What's your process like?
Yeah. So generally speaking, it depends on what my source looks like. So, and I can give a couple examples. I've done some mixing and mastering with stems, and I've also done some mixing and mastering with project files. I actually prefer project files when possible, because the more in depth I can go into something, the higher product I can help kind of bring that out a little bit more. To some extent, stems are a little limiting, but that's also good too, because when you're in the project file, there's a fine line between I am bringing the song out versus I am changing the song. And my general process is to first try and, with making no changes to arrangement or to sound design, to try and get what is there as clear and clean and loud as possible. Um, I generally try to master to negative 3.5 lufs, and the quietest at negative 7 lufs. So, um, And in order to do that, you have to do some very surgical side chaining with the kick and snare specifically. But so, my process is generally get it to sound as good as I can with whatever has been put forth. And then I kind of go into a discussion of, okay, do you like this? I can also do these things, which I think may help get the true soul of the song forward, right? Because sometimes like, and I really didn't have this tracks. Charlie is good at arrangement, and as are you, complicating. So I don't really, but I've worked with some people where it's like, uh, the this one sound specifically is just not working, and sometimes the sound just actually doesn't fit, and I have, like, for me, as an example, I tend to start with violins. Like, every track had violin at one point or another. And then I have to make a decision. Okay, writing with violin helped me get the melody and harmonies that I want, but is violin really the correct answer, or am I just uh,
Weird flex,
navigating
but
to
okay.
violin? Yeah, or am I just navigating out of habit to violin because I just
It might
love violin,
be
right?
habitual a little bit there. What are some of the key mistakes that producers will make where it's muddling their mix, like when you're in the mastering chains here?
Yep.
What are some mistakes that you see people make? I know for me, I had a really hard time with too much frequency range,
Yeah.
muddling certain parts of the song where I was like struggling with that for a really hard time. You definitely helped me through those growing pains as a producer. And I'm super grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly, I love hearing uh, new artist music. I think that some of the most genuine music that comes out is people that are learning how to make music, and it is just something like I've taught guitar, I've taught vocals, I've taught some production to people, and one of my favorite things is hearing somebody, like, they hit this milestone, like they finally got the kick to hit right, and the song may not be it's not their opus magnum. Is that the right
Sure.
term? Something magnum, right? Or it's like your
Yeah.
magnum opus. That's what it is,
Yes,
right? It
that's
may not.
it.
It's not the best thing they're ever gonna make, but you can hear it, and you're like, they're like understanding and really pushing genuine music. I think the biggest thing that people make a mistake in the mixing and mastering process is, and I'm going to speak to dubstep particularly because this is what I'm most knowledgeable
There's
about.
so much harsh abrasion in
Hmm.
certain types of dubstep, and I think a lot of people just be like, "Oh, let me glue compress that. Let me limit that." I'm like, "That's
Yes.
not all you got to do, bro.
No, no, no. And
No,
so,
that is not
so
it."
I'd say one of the biggest mistakes, uh, and this is harped on all the time, but is over complexity and over layering. Now, that is not to say that having 50 tracks playing at one time is a problem. It's just that you have to make sure that each track actually has its own little window, and you make sure that some things are not meant to be heard, they're meant to be felt. They're not meant to be noticed, they're meant to support. So mixing stuff in that is just meant to support and not actually
Filler
be
frequency.
right. And if you build those specifically instead of relying on stacking multiple melodies and multiple chords, but if I have a bass sound that's going wah wah wah, most likely I will also have very quiet super saws in the background, fully stereoized, playing the same note. You can't hear it, but what it's doing is it's adding high frequency color and noise to the main sound, and it's giving it. I might even put like a chord in there, like maybe a slightly different note that just gives it this extra. It turns the one bass note, yeah, and it
Into a
turns that one,
fuller range without the
yeah,
sound being audible. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other mistake people make is in the technical aspects of it, is they don't actually understand how compression works, and they just kind of use it as a tool to make things louder, or they use it as a tool to keep things from getting too loud. There are some uh, drum compression. I hear people compressing their drums all the time, and I'm like, the drum is already compressed. If you're getting a sample from Splice, that
Mhm.
drum itself has been compressed to shit. But one thing that drums do is they have a very loud transient and a very quiet release. So if you drop that transient and raise the release, it sounds louder. But what you'll notice is on bigger and bigger systems, you don't have the hit because there isn't this crazy
You're
volume
completely
difference.
cutting the high frequency range out at a certain threshold, and that's where
Yeah.
you're screwing up.
Yeah, and probably the thing I hear most commonly is people will like, and at the end of the song, you're going to compress it, right? You're going to do compression at the end of the song. The drums have been compressed. If you pick the right sample, like that drum's been compressed to the right amount, probably. So, if you add more layers of compression, you kind of create some weird things where like the drum is loud, but it doesn't hit. And, especially when it comes to snares, that, this, you need a pretty strong transient and you want that drop off. Like if you go listen to if you listen to an Excision song, the way he does the snare, I don't like because it is a sausage. The snare is compressed, it is distorted, it is smashed. Now, I'm not saying there isn't a stylistic aspect to it, of course. But what I've noticed is when I listen to someone like Skrillex, even on his heavier stuff, that snare, it has a very hard transient, and I can feel the snare
Bah, bah,
like,
bah, bah, bah.
yeah,
It's like one hit in a room and it echoes like bah, 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 bah.
yeah, like you'll hear like be like right? Like it's solid. And then you'll hear like an excision snare. It's like bang, and that length of the snare being so loud makes it to where you can't hear anything under it. So you essentially have to cut back so much when the snare hits that in order to even really like feel it. And I don't know, I feel like that interrupts the music for me a little bit.
One thing I'll add
But
on to this question that I've noticed with a lot of startup producers, they get really discouraged because they have no idea how to master, and that's when they give up because they
yeah,
can get to an arrangement, but to really hear the crystal clearness of the song, you got to master it to a level that it's like the frequencies are like all hitting at the right moment, and you got to feel it.
yeah,
So like I did this when I was a younger producer, which I don't do this now, but phantom sound, um, where you have an arrangement and you have
hmm,
all this dead space. There's no breaks in between. So, like, you might think that there's no sound coming because at the end of it, but you have like a line on your Ableton and there's still stuff there. You gotta get rid of all that. Like, you might not
yes,
understand that you added an effects or something to it, and it's carrying that sound out further into the track than necessary, and that can cause a whole lot of distortion.
yep,
You got to really like fine tune detail, pull it as tiny as you can get it, and just like fine tooth comb go
yep.
through it, take out any phantom sound that might be there, because that will make a huge difference
Well,
in your mixes.
that's why Kill the Noise. That's why he came up with that name. Kill the Noise is a reference to getting rid of the noise, the background noise in the songs. If you listen to his music, he'll tell you he almost never uses reverb for that reason. A reverb is like off limits to him. He uses echo to kind of create that space. I would say for mastering, I actually have uh, a controversial take on this. Um, and this is a kind of a thing that I learned from, I want to say, I think it was Pendulum. Um, my mastering chain is a limiter. That's it. I do not master. So the reason that I do that Now, if I am mastering someone else's music, that's not the case. But because I'm producing my own music, when I'm at the point of starting a song, I know how loud I want it to be. Right, I'm shooting for a certain level of loudness. I put that limiter on the end track from the beginning before I touch anything else, and
Same,
then I mix
same,
into
bro.
that,
Same,
and then
bro.
I like why would you turn down the okay? I've got a song. I'm trying to master it, right? Why would I turn down using an EQ the bass instead of turning the bass down? Like why would I paint with such a wide brush when I have access to the colored pencils, right? So I set my volume and then I just mix to that volume. And then once I'm there, I'm there. Like I know how loud I want my kick to be. I know how much quieter I want the snare to be. I set that up from the very beginning. I run into a pretty tight limiter that is going to make it to where not only I will know as soon as I put a sound in, I will know what that sound is going to sound like at the end of the process. So if I'm doing it the other way, where I make this whole song and now I want to master it, well, because I didn't have all the heavy compression that I'm going to have at the end, if I didn't have that in the beginning, I'm not actually hearing what that end compression is going to do at the end of my process. So instead, I put it at the beginning and I put a sound in, and immediately I'm like, oh, I can hear that there's too much 400 hertz on this sound. And instead of using an EQ to try and, finagle my way around it, I'll go into the sound design and I'll fix the sound design because if the sound design is right, you really shouldn't need to do too much to it. So so I'll just remove those frequencies from the oscillator itself, and now I know and if I do it at the end, then I put that mastering chain on the end and I compress everything, and then I'm like, wow, this sounds like shit now. Why? Oh, because there's all these things that I didn't know I should have been focusing on from the beginning. So that's my personal take on the mastering stuff. If people are having a hard time, then it makes total sense to send it off to a mastering person, because having a second set of ears can sometimes help a lot. What I've noticed is the faster I can finish a track, the less I need that second set of ears. If I can get a track done in 6 hours, 7 hours, then I really don't have to have a second mastering person, because my ears are still like pretty much fresh. Like I haven't listened the song to death at this point. So
Gotcha.
yeah,
I
if I'm spending
remember
20 hours.
I remember a couple years ago, we were trying to hit the deadline for Creatures from the Deep, the
Mhm.
first collective album drop that we were doing, and I was struggling to finish this track. It was really ambitious of me
Mhm.
to try, and I came to you at wit's end. I drove over to your house and I was like, "You got to help me, bro." The deadline is what? It was like a week away or something, not even
Yep.
like 3 days. And I was like, "Yo, I'm not gonna make the album drop if we don't do this." And we put it in, and you painstakingly, you were at your computer, I was at my computer. We were working on the same project, like painstakingly going through it. And you're like, "Nope, nope, nope. Why? Why? What is that?" And I was like trying not to cry, but you we ended up turning a really like orchestral, really like ethereal track into like the nastiest like psytrance fucking song unexpectedly, and it was crazy because like all the parts were there, but I was putting too much into it. It was way too complicated than it needed to be, and I couldn't get like the levels right. And I was like, "Bro, I'm losing it." And then you sat there so patiently and you went through everything in that track with me. I'll never forget this.
And you know what? People go hard to that song. I play that song at every show. That's a staple part of my set. And that song is actually because my set starts at
Calypso's
120
Fire.
BPM.
Calypso's Fire, to
Yeah.
anybody who's curious about that song. That was the first song I ever produced with Brandon Fya Boy.
And honestly, like people, like that's the song that's like the trigger to like, okay, it's about to start getting heavy. Like, because that song I can go from one, because it's at 120, and I can go from 120 to 128, and that's where the more intense section of my set starts. So I can during that middle break, I can start slowly raising the tempo and get it up to 128. Now I can mix my like bass house stuff in and then into dubstep. So that's a staple part of my set. That's like when people that's like the moment when people realize, oh, this is about to start getting intense.
And I have to point this out too, that for you to make that song with me, if it wasn't for you, that song never would have been what it is.
Right.
That song was ambitiously different from your style, like completely opposite range too. So it's wild how you were the one to help me finish an ambitious track that was out of your comfort zone too. So that was really
Well,
cool.
and as soon as because the first time I heard the track, I was like, this needs to be psytrance. I can hear it in the
That was
song.
the first thing that you
And
said. Yeah.
and I don't even really listen to a lot of psytrance. I don't have a problem with it, but it's not a common thing for me to even listen to. So then to
Exactly.
like go and like make it, it was like, oh, this is now. I did have some people commenting saying, oh, that's not psytrance, that's
It's
acid
not, but
bass
it
or
is.
acid
Like
house, and I'm like,
it's 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 own thing. It's suspension Fya Boy psytrance. Like
yep,
we're both pushing that boundary of if you could say it sounds like psytrance, but if you looked at it as a producer with producer eyes, I'm like, that's not psytrance, but it is. Why? Big
yep.
question mark. Why does it work?
Well, it's like not the psytrance tempo, but it's the
Exactly.
psytrance method of build of a constant build.
Yeah.
Like that's like one of the things that psytrance is really. I always feel when I'm listening to psytrance like I'm always building towards something.
Mhm.
Um, but just a heads up, my headphones are about to die, so it
No
may
worries.
some odd may happen. And I might have to go to phone speaker and stuff, but
All right.
here we
Well,
are.
finish your thoughts on that, and then we can do our outro.
Yeah, I mean, thoughts on that? I love that track. I think it's very important for artists to specifically try to go out of their way to make music that they're not comfortable making, because that's when you learn new things that you can bring to the main genre that you're producing. Like if you're mainly a dubstep producer, you should try to make some bass house. You should try to make some big room, because there are things in those genres that are useful and that
And
people overlook.
right now, I mentioned this earlier. I'm collaborating with a new artist that is not like known or anything like that. I'm trying to help him like reach his potential, like giving him my
Yeah.
knowledge, help him become a better producer. And we're collaborating on a song. It is bordering the spectrum of vocal wise with the intro into the vocal aspects is like borderline color bass esque, but it's
Hmm.
rhythm,
Yeah.
dubstep, like rhythm with a little bit of color bass flair. You know, I believe I sent this one to you, and that's as
Yeah.
accurate
Yeah,
as I can
that's
make it.
that's the one you did the vocals on, right?
Numb, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, that track is dope. And
Yeah, I'm gonna
yeah,
put the final
the
touches on that. He said it's a go. He just wants me to tweak a couple little things, and I like rolled my
yeah,
eyes. I'm like, why? But it's like, no, I'm hearing you. Let's give that a try. It's
yep,
not a matter of like I have more skill than you or I know where something needs to go in the arrangement. It's like, is the other person in fairness feeling it the way I am, regardless of like
yes,
what level you're at? It's like he might hear it in a different way than I was. So
exactly.
I'm cool with that feedback. I'm not gonna get butt hurt about that. Um,
No,
the other
that's
thing,
and that.
the other
Sorry,
one
go ahead.
too is I'm experimenting with video game like chip tune sounds
Hmm.
into heavy dubstep.
I love it.
Yeah, I
That's
have
why
a
we all
song
like
I'm
dubstep,
working
because we
on
played
called
video games.
yeah, I have a song I'm working on called Dungeon Master because I'm like super into like D&D, and
Yeah,
after this podcast that we're doing the D&D game tonight. So, woohoo.
nice.
Yeah, so that was the theme of that new song. It's pretty cool. Um
Hell
it's
yeah.
ambitious. If it wasn't for your help though, I would never have been able to produce more coherent harder styles of genre, which I'm getting more comfortable with now. That might not be the
Yeah.
shebang that I go for like throughout my career, but I do occasionally like to play with those abrasive sounds, even though I'm not really into the like super crazy headbang stuff. I every once in a while, in
Yeah,
moderation. Maybe.
for sure. We're getting older. So
Yeah, my neck
it
hurts just
starts to
thinking
get
about it.
painful.
My neck
Yeah,
hurts thinking
same.
about
Same.
it.
It's
All right.
permanent.
Thank you so much for just for participating in the podcast. I know it's been a while. I think we
Absolutely.
covered a lot of great stuff. We got, into our emotions. We got into honesty and being genuine. And I hope that anything we talked about today can help touch someone else, and maybe they'd like to be inspired to come talk to in the podcast as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a great time. This went so much smoother than I thought it would. You've I think I have a real talent for this
For
because
podcasting?
yeah.
Thanks,
th-
man.
th- I'm telling you, I think people are going to be able to just listen to this conversation, and I think you're going to have a lot of people make it all the way through.
I hope
Like
so.
I'm not saying I'm not a great speaker or anything. I stutter. Blah 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 blah. But
I
I
often
think
mispronounce words out of nervousness or like say the wrong
yeah.
thing, but I'm not
But
gonna
this
really
felt very
edit.
smooth.
Yeah, I'm not gonna
This
really
didn't
edit
feel
that stuff
forced.
out. No.
Yeah,
I think that the stories that people can share and their experiences are really, really important for other people in the industry to hear and to feel,
yeah,
because there might be somebody out there that has a similar experience that this might help them with, or
absolutely.
it might foster new inspiration or new moments of clarity for someone to say I'm not alone, or hey, it's okay that I can't pick a genre. Like any of the things he talked about, I'm really hoping that it touches and makes people feel more heard inside. It's okay to be genuine. It's okay to not be perfect. It's okay
Yep,
to struggle and be a human being. We are not robots.
that's true.
Mhm.
100%.
Thank you so
Unless
much,
it's
Brandon.
all a simulation, then
We
we
live in a
might be robots.
simulation. Birds aren't real.
I don't know. Like some real smart people are saying we might be programs. So
Well, can somebody program into my source code that like I'm the best music producer in the world? Thanks. So I can
I
help
just want
other
$1 million.
people.
I just want $1 million. Like
Share my
I feel like
depression.
that's not that hard.
Write that out in the source code.
Right.
All right. Peace out, fam. I hope to see you soon. You're too far away.
Absolutely. Nah,
Bye.
September. September, give me a date. I'm coming.
All right. For the wedding.
Yeah.
Thank you. To our viewers,
You're
I'm getting
welcome.
married this year. To love of my life. Woo. So happy. Bye, Brando.
Bye, Sammy. Have a good one. Thanks for
You
having me.
too. You're welcome.